Chapter 1027. After learning the Constitution Defying Creation Sutra again, Xueqi focused on refining his divine energy. The entire world's origin power was under his control. The human race and the beasts of the other races did not know how to use primordial power, so he was the only one who benefited. With the Constitution Defying Creation scripture, his cultivation could be said to have advanced by leaps and bounds. Less than 10 years. His divine power had reached the peak of the boundless universe. It had to be said that the origin power here was of a higher grade than the spiritual energy in the boundless universe, and it was also more abundant. He had fallen in love with this place. Here he could grow stronger without any scruples. About 50 years had passed. The Sword Emperor's daughter found Xueqi again. "My father wants to see you," the Sword Emperor's daughter said as she looked at Xueqi. A strange look flashed in her eyes. He had become much stronger. Just now, he was no weaker than the previous primogenitor lords. Xueqi nodded and did not ask further. If the Sword Emperor wanted to meet him, he could only meet him. There was no point in asking. The Sword Emperor's daughter waved her sleeve and took Xueqi away. On the cliff, the children who were practicing their swordsmanship looked at each other. What did they hear? Sword Emperor? Who was that woman? Kunlun looked at the sky and was lost in thought. His eyes showed desire. Xueqi looked at the space-time electric currents around him. He suddenly realized that these electric currents were showing signs of turning into a space-time kaleidoscope. Could it be that this woman was using the spiritless state? The Sword Emperor's daughter noticed his gaze and asked, "What are you looking at?" Xueqi did not hide it. Blank mind state? What a good name. The Sword Emperor's daughter's eyes lit up. Xueqi raised his brow. Could it be that he was the one who named the godly state? So this was the cause and effect relationship. Soon, they flew out of the space-time tunnel and arrived at a void of absolute darkness. There was a ball of intense light in front of them. The daughter of the Sword Sovereign brought him into the bright light at an extremely fast speed. Xueqi felt his vision blur, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the Sword Emperor's figure. The Sword Emperor was still as domineering as ever, and it was impossible to discern his true form with one's eyes. "I heard that you came from the future?" the Sword Emperor asked faintly. Hearing this, Xueqi looked towards the Sword Emperor's daughter. This lass really did say it. The Sword Emperor's daughter had a smile on her face, as if she didn't see his gaze. Xueqi nodded. "Yes." The Sword Monarch continued to ask, "Could it be that you are from my Sword Monarch's lineage? Your sword Dao is very similar to ours." Xueqi said hesitantly, "In the future, I was also called the Sword Emperor. However, before me, there were no more powerful Sword Emperors, and the Founder Master was the earliest legend." The Sword Emperor's daughter frowned. She had never heard Xueqi mention this before. What did that mean? Why didn't they leave their names in the later generations? She could not help but look at the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor fell into silence. The atmosphere became oppressive. Xueqi waited quietly. He didn't sense any killing intent, which meant that he didn't anger the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor was probably thinking. Perhaps what he said today was directly related to the legends of later generations. After a long while, the Sword Emperor spoke again. "I understand. From today onwards, feel free to tell me whatever you want. I will satisfy you." Xueqi felt quite startled and looked at the Sword Emperor in confusion, not understanding his true intentions. "Father, Nian is our descendant," the Sword Emperor's daughter said as she smiled and rolled her eyes at Xueqi. "Impudent!" The Sword Emperor suddenly roared, scaring the Sword Emperor's daughter into silence. She looked at the Sword Emperor in astonishment, not understanding why he was angry all of a sudden. Xueqi was also surprised. "You must take good care of him in the future and don't disobey him. Remember." The Sword Emperor instructed. The Sword Emperor's daughter knelt down in fear and trepidation. Xueqi narrowed his eyes. He seemed to have understood something, and his expression became complicated. "Yes," the Sword Emperor's daughter replied. She turned to look at Xueqi with a complicated expression. "You may leave," the Sword Emperor continued. The Sword Emperor's daughter nodded and was about to leave with Xueqi. Before leaving, Xueqi turned back and asked, "Is this all true?" The Sword Emperor did not reply. The Sword Emperor's daughter waved her right hand, and the two of them flew out of the powerful light. A while later. It's true, the Sword Emperor said faintly. So everything you said was true. After returning to the human tribe, Xueqi was still silent. The Sword Emperor's daughter looked at him and wanted to ask but did not know what to ask. Finally, she could only leave with a stomach full of questions. Xueqi landed at the edge of the cliff. He sat down and fell into deep thought. So I was wrong. This is not the Kunlun origin court, Xueqi sighed. Xueqi sighed. His brows were filled with worry. His heart was heavy. Kunlun came up to him and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Xueqi looked at him with a kind expression and smiled. Nothing. Looking at this brat, Xueqi was a little dazed. He thought of Zhou Tanhua. Although this brat was not as handsome as Zhou Tanhua. What does the Sword Emperor look like? Have you seen him before? Kunlun asked excitedly. Xueqi shook his head and asked, Kunlun, you have practiced the sword for so long. Have you ever had a dream? What is a dream? A dream is something that you really want to achieve. If that's the case, then my dream is to become you. Me? Yes. Looking at Kunlun's innocent and expectant face, Xueqi smiled even more warmly. He patted the back of Kunlun's head and scolded him with a smile. Hurry up and practice the sword. Kunlun chuckled and left immediately. Xueqi did not continue to be sentimental and quickly immersed himself in cultivation. No matter what period it was. Becoming more powerful was his goal. The time that belonged to him was not here. After hundreds of years, Xueqi regained control of godly blankness. With the help of godly blankness, he began to travel freely. He visited worlds one after another, and he enjoyed the feeling of being free and unfettered. Freedom. While traveling, he found that each world was different. Some were big, some were small. It was the same for human tribes. Not all the humans in the world were children. The only similarity was that the humans in the human tribes would not grow. Seems like the humans here are still lacking something. Xueqi walked in the clouds and mumbled softly. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of him and slapped at him with extreme speed. Xueqi's eyes narrowed, and a mighty legendary sword appeared in front of him. He used the blade to block the palm. Boom! The sea of clouds billowed, and a visible shockwave swept out in all directions. Xueqi looked over and saw the ancestor hovering in front of him. You are already so powerful? The ancestor said coldly. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. You want to kill me? Xueqi asked. He was not angry, but he was a little confused. The ancestor raised his right hand, and a silver sword appeared in the air. Looking at Xueqi, he said, the way of the sword is supreme. What right do you have to teach it to a mortal? Just for this? Xueqi felt that this was quite funny and explained, it's not like that. Actually, the Tao is in the human heart. Anyone can. The ancestor immediately drew his sword, and a cold light lit up the heavens and earth. Chapter 1028. Clang. The two swords clashed, and Xueqi used the sword fusion technique. All of the legendary swords fused into his soul body, and his body gave off a brilliant silver light as he entered an extraordinary state. The primogenitor's eyes widened. He rapidly brandished his sword, his attacks ferocious. Each sword strike contained a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. Boom! 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 The earth trembled and the mountains and rivers collapsed. Xueqi held the suppressive legendary sword and easily received each of the original Lord's swords. Now that he had recovered to his peak strength, or even stronger, it was naturally easy for him to deal with the founder. Without a strong enemy, the children and primordial people created by the Sword Emperor would not work hard to cultivate. Even the Sword Emperor might not be a match for a Cardinal Heaven expert. Xueqi held his sword with one hand while his other hand was behind his back. His body did not even move, and the primordial ancestor could do nothing about it. No matter how flashy and domineering the primogenitor's swordplay was, it couldn't force him back. The progenitor lord was enraged and his aura became even more berserk. The creatures in this world were so frightened that they fled in all directions. There were even many birds that flew away in fright. Xueqi shook his head and smiled as he said, Your way of the sword is not proficient enough, you need more time. When these words fell into the ears of the progenitor lord, it was undoubtedly mockery. He did not know that Xueqi was really looking at him as a junior. Otherwise, if it was someone else who displayed his murderous intent toward Zhou Xuanji, he would already be dead. Humph! The founder coldly snorted. Strands of black energy suddenly seeped out of his blade. His eyes also turned pure black. His aura suddenly changed. Zhou Xuanji frowned. This aura is... How could this be? Cardinal Heaven. Why was this kid's aura so similar to a Cardinal Heaven expert's? Could it be? Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of a possibility, and his face turned grim. The progenitor lord began to move about. His sword became abnormally tyrannical and filled with destructive power. Zhou Xuanji had to be serious. The Tao of Annihilation. He remembered that the spirit of the First Lord had mentioned that the constitutional defying creation scripture and the Tao of Annihilation were two supreme Taos that reinforced and restrained each other. Whenever the constitutional defying creation scripture appeared, the Tao of Annihilation would also appear. Every time the swords clashed, Zhou Xuanji could sense an insidious energy drilling into his body, destroying his divine energy. He had no choice but to recite the constitution-defying creation scripture in his heart. As expected, with the activation of the constitutional-defying creation sutra, the Tao of extermination could no longer destroy Zhou Xuanji's soul. The constitution-defying creation scripture. How did you? The progenitor lord asked in shock as he attacked. He couldn't understand. This fellow appeared out of nowhere. Not only did he know the sword Tao, but he also knew the constitution-defying creation scripture. Judging from his attainments, he was even better than his younger sister. Could it have been imparted by the Sword Emperor? His jealousy burned intensely, and his murderous intent surged. He wanted to destroy Zhou Xuanji's soul. Zhou Xuanji focused his eyes and slashed with his sword. Judgment of Annihilation. There was a loud bang. Sword light burst forth, and the progenitor was directly sent flying. The sea of clouds was sliced apart, and it was a magnificent sight. The progenitor master stopped, his soul body faintly discernible. His eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. He cried out in astonishment, "What is this?" Zhou Xuanji said expressionlessly, "The path of extermination should not be used like this. You and I have no enmity. Why do you have to do this? You are the progenitor." His tone was filled with anger. "I can use it however I want. There's a need for that." The founder roared in anger. But before he could finish speaking, a figure appeared in front of him. Pah! After being slapped, the progenitor lord's anger disappeared, and he knelt down in fear. He said with a trembling voice, "Godfather, it was the Sword Emperor." The Sword Emperor maintained his silhouette and did not reveal his true body. "I taught you the path of extermination for you to use like this? Presumptuous!" The Sword Emperor cried out. After that, he slapped the progenitor again. The progenitor lord was stunned. He looked at Zhou Xuanji again and immediately felt ashamed. At the same time, he hated Zhou Xuanji to the core. The Sword Emperor turned to Zhou Xuanji and said, "I'm sorry, I did not teach him well. I was too focused on opening up the world and did not have the time to teach things that I had already created." The progenitor lord opened his eyes wide. He felt that he was going crazy. His godfather apologized to Zhou Xuanji? What was this? It shouldn't be. Impossible. Zhou Xuanji said meaningfully, "Where I come from, the path of extermination is controlled by demons." The Sword Emperor's body trembled and fell into silence. Zhou Xuanji turned and left. The Sword Emperor did not stop him. He looked at the progenitor lord and said coldly, "Follow me." After he spoke, he and the progenitor lord disappeared. In the soulless state, Zhou Xuanji wandered around aimlessly with his arms crossed. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, a beam of light flew out from his eyes. It was the progenitor lord's spirit. The progenitor lord's spirit looked at him and said faintly, "Your attention is off. You want to find serendipity, not worry about your future." Zhou Xuanji looked up at him and said, "Future? That's a good word to use." The progenitor lord's spirit shook his head and said seriously, "Don't care about what happens now or what the future holds. Your goal is to become more powerful and find your serendipity. You don't belong here. Your everything is still waiting for you." Zhou Xuanji remained silent and did not reply immediately. This was not before the Kunlun Origin Court. It was after the boundless universe. The Sword Emperor was Zhou Xuanji's descendant. The title of Sword Emperor came from him. This was why he always felt that the Sword Emperor's daughter was so similar to Zhou Shaoxian. He did not kill the progenitor lord because of his relationship with the progenitor lord. But where is the sovereign's serendipity? I can't find it at all. Zhou Xuanji sighed, feeling very worried. The progenitor lord's spirit asked, "You really don't know?" Zhou Xuanji fell silent again. "Actually, you know that this experience is not to make things difficult for you. The sovereign serendipity belongs to you. To you, it is within your reach. It is only a test of your heart," the progenitor lord's spirit continued to speak. Zhou Xuanji understood. The sovereign serendipity was with the Sword Emperor. But if he took away the Sword Emperor's serendipity, what would happen to the Sword Emperor? In this era, it meant that he was already dead, and the sovereign serendipity had been passed on to his descendants. He could not take away the sovereign serendipity from his descendants. After all, after the Sword Emperor recognized him, he did not put on airs. Instead, he took care of him and sided with him. If the Sword Emperor's daughter and the progenitor lord were disrespectful to him, the Sword Emperor would scold them or even attack them. The more the Sword Emperor respected him, the more he could not bring himself to do it. You have to make a choice. The progenitor lord's spirit disappeared after saying this. Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. Soon, he exited the godly state and returned to the world he controlled. On the cliff, hundreds of children were training with their swords. The sound they made when they swung their swords merged together, creating a majestic scene. Kunlun stood at the front. He was the most talented in the sword's way and was now the most powerful person in the tribe. Zhou Xuanji stood on the clouds and looked at the children with a smile. He did not descend but trained with his sword on the clouds. The children could not see him, nor did they notice the changes in the sea of clouds. Chapter 1029. After the battle with the original master, Zhou Xuanji did not see the original master again. Perhaps he had been grounded by the Sword Emperor. Zhou Xuanji thought that the original master was not angry but just a little worried. He was afraid that his descendants would go astray and walk the same evil path as the Cardinal Heaven cultivators. But there was nothing he could do. He could not possibly find the original master and tell him that he was his ancestor and that he should forgive him. Would the original master believe him? Moreover, he did not want to interfere with the current space-time too much. In order to forget about these trivial matters, Zhou Xuanji focused on cultivation. He decided to return after he reached the imperishable stage. Gu Juejiu was still waiting for him. That guy had already charged into the star's domain. Although time had stopped, Zhou Xuanji was afraid that something unexpected would happen. Another year passed. Zhou Xuanji stayed in his own world and did not go out. However, he found that there were more and more creatures in this world. Not only that, but the humans in the tribe were also growing. Kunlun had already grown 20 centimeters taller. At this rate, he would grow into an adult sooner or later. Although he was confused, he understood that it was the Sword Emperor's doing. He pretended not to notice, but the humans could sense it. Kunlun found Zhou Xuanji. "I've grown taller again. Will I be like you in the future?" he asked excitedly and continued to talk. He was not the only one growing taller. He said all the names he could remember. Zhou Xuanji played with the sword in his hand and smiled. "Yes. You might even be taller than me in the future." Kunlun blinked and asked, "Is it because of your kindness?" Ever since Zhou Xuanji came to this world, they learned the sword and grew taller. In the hearts of the humans, he was the highest faith. "No, it's the Sword Emperor's kindness." Zhou Xuanji shook his head. "Sword Emperor?" Kunlun asked. "How powerful is the Sword Emperor? How is he compared to you?" "He's much more powerful. We can't compare at all." "Really? So you were created by the Sword Emperor too?" "That's right. It's all because of the Sword Emperor. All of this is because of the Sword Emperor's kindness." "Wow, when can we meet the Sword Emperor?" "We will meet if we are fated." Zhou Xuanji was not stingy with his praise for his descendants. Although he did not know how he disappeared, the Sword Emperor created all of this because he had great merit and ability. After chatting with Kunlun for a while, Zhou Xuanji told him to continue training. This boy's talent in the way of the sword was exceptional, and he had a pure and kind heart. Zhou Xuanji wanted to nurture him into a capable subordinate of the Sword Emperor. Even though the Sword Emperor was powerful, Xueqi always felt that his ability to rule was not good enough. In the future, his descendants might turn against him. After some time, Xueqi began teaching even more powerful sword techniques. He wanted to make this human tribe the most powerful one. He began chanting the ancestral voice every day, causing everyone to enter a state of enlightenment. The Sword Emperor's daughter was attracted by the ancestral voice. She arrived above the clouds and looked down with an astonished expression. The Constitution-defying creation scripture can be used like this? She was inwardly amazed. She had only taught Xueqi the constitutional-defying creation scripture, and had never used it to help the human race cultivate like Xueqi. She suddenly understood why Godfather treated him like that. So this guy was here to help them. Perhaps his appearance was the will of her father. She watched for a while before leaving. Xueqi sensed her aura but did not show it. She wouldn't harm him anyway. As time passed, Xueqi tried to break through to the imperishable stage several times but to no avail. He was in a terrible fix. But on this day, the cooldown time of the wish-fulfilling sword was up. The first time he made a wish, he made his exterminating divine eyes reach the perfect state. What about this time? I wish to reach the imperishable stage, Xueqi said in his heart. His eyes were burning with excitement in his heart. You can't make a wish directly, the sword spirit replied, which made Xueqi frown. He had almost forgotten about this. Then, can I raise my godly mode to the extreme? He asked. Sure, the sword spirit replied. Instantly, a brilliant radiance burst out from Xueqi's body. He immediately turned into a beam of light and flew out of the world. He came to the dark void and entered a mysterious state. The Constitution-defying creation scripture reverberated in the depths of his soul. It was his voice that was shouting the ancestral voice. It was a miraculous creation. After a long while, only then did the radiance on Xueqi's body dissipate. His body was covered with starlight as though he was breaking out of a cocoon. And this cocoon was a cocoon of light. He opened his eyes slowly. His eyes were radiant. This feeling, Xueqi mumbled to himself. In the next second, the surrounding void blurred, and he entered godly mode. The space-time kaleidoscope moved backward quickly. The speed grew faster and faster until it turned into a pure white space. It looked like a seal, but he was still moving. The extreme state of godly mode. Boom! Xueqi felt that he had broken through some kind of shackle. The divine energy in his body began to boil. Imperishable stage. His imperishable stage was godly mode. When he reached his limit, he could stop everything. Just like the space-time kaleidoscope beside him, everything turned blank. His magic energy surged wildly. His soul was transforming too. Analyze that the sword owner has broken through to the imperishable stage. Gotcha started. Ding. Congratulations, the sword owner obtained sword domain, Karma Sovereign, Great Awareness Dark God. The sword spirit's voice came, indicating that Xueqi had finally broken through to the imperishable stage. He sensed the surging divine energy in his body as he looked in front of him. Sword name, Great Awareness Dark God Grade, Karma Sovereign description. This sword can seal the imperishable stage. The absolute darkness can engulf all the enemy's senses and divine will. Sword domain. Create a sword domain in one's eyes. When used at the imperishable stage, it can seal everything. They were all very powerful. The Great Awareness Dark God could only be used at the imperishable stage. Xueqi had already reached it, so there was no restriction on his cultivation. Xueqi immediately took out the Great Awareness Dark God. A ray of black light appeared. It was the Great Awareness Dark God. It was a ray of light. The blade below the hilt was wrapped in black light. It was 5 meters long and looked domineering. Xueqi flipped his left hand, and another Karma Sovereign sword appeared in his hand. Serendipity Sword Slaying. This sword was shining with a silver radiance. Compared to the Great Awareness Dark God, it felt like one was righteous while the other was evil. Shortly after, another sword appeared above Xueqi's head. It was also the Karma Sovereign Sword. Miracle Creation Sword. This sword looked like it was forged from crystal. Its entire body was translucent and glowed with a colorful divine radiance, holy and majestic. 3 Karma Sovereign swords appeared, and Zhou Xuanji's aura reached its peak. He smiled. Such power fascinated him. No wonder those imperishable stage cultivators were so conceited. Just when he was enjoying the feeling of power brought by his breakthrough, a figure appeared in front of him. It was the Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor was still in his shadow state. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "You broke through? What's this?" Zhou Xuanji replied with a smile, "Imperishable stage." The Sword Emperor was silent, as though he was stunned. Chapter 10:30. Imperishable Realm. The Sword Emperor mumbled as he repeatedly thought about these words. Zhou Xuanji looked at him and said with a smile, "There's something that I want to ask you for." "What is it?" the Sword Emperor asked. "A serendipity," Zhou Xuanji said as he looked at the Sword Emperor without shifting his gaze. The Sword Emperor hesitated before raising his right hand, and a ball of light appeared in his palm. "This serendipity was passed down by you. It should be returned to its rightful owner. Take it," the Sword Emperor said as he waved his right hand. The ball of light rose up and flew toward Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was quite surprised. He did not expect it to be so easy. He asked hesitantly, "Have you really thought about it? What if you regret it?" The Sword Emperor replied calmly, "There's nothing to regret. This is not your era. Here, I'm the most powerful. Everything was created by me. I will control everything." Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. It seemed that the Sword Emperor knew a lot about the endless universe. He raised his hand and grabbed the ball of light. Just as he touched it, the ball of light disappeared and entered his body. He was very curious about what it was. The supreme legendary sword system, which he suspected to be the sovereign serendipity, was still there. Could it be that the sovereign serendipity had become two? "You should be able to go back with this serendipity, right?" the Sword Emperor asked. Zhou Xuanji replied, "If it's the serendipity I want, then I can go back. Before I go back, if you need any help, just tell me." The Sword Emperor smiled and said, "Is that so? Then I won't be courteous. Can you impart all your sword Dao to me? My father didn't impart much sword Dao to me because he grasped very little." "Who's your father?" "Zhou Qiankuan." "Who's your grandfather?" "Zhou Xianlong." "Zhou Tianyuan, Zhou Tanhua, Zhou Shaoxian. Have you heard of them?" "No. Maybe they're my ancestors." Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought. He had thought that the Sword Emperor was his great-grandson or great-grandson. He did not expect them to be so far apart. What exactly happened to Terminus in the boundless universe? "Can you teach me the sword's way?" the Sword Emperor asked. Zhou Xuanji nodded and smiled. "Anytime." "Then let's do it now, lest you suddenly go back," the Sword Emperor said. Zhou Xuanji put away the Serendipity Sword and Miracle Creation Sword. Holding the Great Sense Dark God in his hand, he began to use his sword techniques and thaumaturgy. The Sword Monarch watched seriously and memorized every move and stance. To help him understand better, Zhou Xuanji began chanting the ancestral voice. "Can the Constitution-defying creation scripture be used like this?" The Sword Emperor was stunned once again. A brand new door had opened for him. He suddenly had an idea. It was about how to benefit all living beings and how to open up a more prosperous world. After an unknown period of time, Zhou Xuanji had finally used all his sword techniques and sword Dao. He taught Zhou Xuanji everything he knew, except for the eye-sword domain and the imperishable realm that he had just mastered. After all, he had yet to completely adapt to these two divine abilities. "I have remembered them all. They are broad and deep and I have benefited a lot. I can't just take advantage of them, so I will teach you one too," Sword Emperor said in satisfaction. He was indeed very powerful, but his creativity in the way of the sword was far inferior to Zhou Xuanji's. More accurately, his knowledge was too little. While Zhou Xuanji had the supreme legendary sword system, who knew how many ways of the sword he had learned? Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "It is already a great gift for you to let me have this serendipity. Moreover, you are my descendant. I should teach you the way of the sword myself." The Sword Emperor was speechless. An indescribable sorrow spread in his heart. He quickly came up to Zhou Xuanji and pressed his palm on Zhou Xuanji's chest. "This Tao is called the Tao of Annihilation. I have learned the Constitution-defying creation scripture and the Tao of Annihilation from my ancestors. I can't sense the aura of the Tao of Annihilation in you. So I will teach you now. The Sword Emperor said seriously. An extremely powerful force entered Zhou Xuanji's soul. Domineering. Evil. Extremely destructive. Even more powerful than a cardinal heaven. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. He did not expect himself to learn the Tao of Annihilation. The founder spirit said that the constitution-defying creation scripture and the Tao of Annihilation would choose different inheritors. But now, he had learned two supreme Taos. What was going on? He entered a state of epiphany. He stopped thinking about it and tried his best to understand the Tao of Annihilation. The Tao of Annihilation and the constitution-defying creation scripture were two completely different great Taos. Creation and destruction. Zhou Xuanji was transforming into a whole new state. With the help of the Sword Emperor, he learned without any hindrance. In just half a month, he successfully mastered the Tao of Annihilation. The Tao of Annihilation was just as he thought. It could annihilate everything. All laws could be destroyed. Everything could be annihilated. Annihilate everything. Of course, the Tao of Annihilation was not invincible. If the opponent was much more powerful than him, the Tao of Annihilation would not be able to withstand it. Moreover, the Tao of Annihilation was useless against the Tao of Annihilation. It was not that the constitution-defying creation scripture was more powerful than the Tao of Annihilation. It was just that the two supreme Taos cancelled each other out. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes slowly and praised, with the constitution-defying creation scripture and the Tao of Annihilation, you can indeed create everything and dominate everything. Creation was creation. Dominate was destruction. The Sword Emperor nodded and said, I'm going into isolated cultivation. You can leave if you want. You don't have to tell me. After saying this, the Sword Emperor turned and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji smiled. It seemed that his descendant was not bad. He knew how to repay kindness and was filial. Although the Sword Emperor was not perfect, becoming a ruler was not a bad thing for all living beings. Zhou Xuanji immediately entered spiritless mode and quickly returned to his own world. He stood on the clouds and said softly, I've already obtained the serendipity. How do I go back? The Ancestor Lord Spirit flew out from his eyes. I didn't expect you to master the Tao of Annihilation and the imperishable realm. Is this the serendipity of the Sovereign? It's incredible indeed, the Ancestor Lord Spirit praised. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. Could it be that the Ancestor Lord did not understand the serendipity of the Sovereign? If you want to go back, go back. The serendipity is in your hands. You can leave at any time, as long as you are willing, the Ancestor Lord Spirit said before disappearing. Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of spiritless mode. When he returned, he felt that he could go even faster. Could it be? He came to a realization, but he did not leave immediately. He entered the tribe and found Kunlun, who was training. Kunlun was focused on cultivating the ancestral dragon sword and occasionally turned into a green dragon. However, it was still far from Zhou Xuanji's ancestral dragon sword. Kunlun, Zhou Xuanji called out softly. After interacting with him for so long, he already treated Kunlun as his descendant, like a grandson. Kunlun immediately ran over to him and asked, What's wrong? Zhou Xuanji raised his hand and patted Kunlun's head as he smiled and said, I'm going to leave. I came to tell you. Leave. Where are you going? Kunlun asked. He had a big smile on his face and looked very excited. Evidently, he had made a breakthrough in the way of the sword. Zhou Xuanji said, I'm going back to where I came from. I won't be coming back again. Chapter 1031. Never coming back? Kunlun was stunned. His excitement was immediately doused. He became anxious and asked with a trembling voice, Why do I have to go back? Isn't it better to stay here? Zhou Xuanji smiled gently. Many people are waiting for me. They are in danger, but you are not. You have so many tribesmen with you. Kunlun was silent. He always felt that Zhou Xuanji was distant, as though he would leave at any moment. But he did not expect Zhou Xuanji to leave so suddenly. After I leave, you must work hard on your sword and become the guardian of your tribe. Do you understand? Zhou Xuanji instructed seriously. As the world develops, all living beings become more and more powerful. There will always be powerful people and weak people. different mentalities will develop, which will lead to disasters. The human race cannot be protected by gods forever. Just like those primogeniture lords, they could fall from a high and mighty position and disappear without a trace. If the human race wants to survive, they must rely on themselves. It is the same for any race. Kunlun opened his eyes wide and tried to digest his words. Xueqi smiled again and said, "The sword in my hand is not just a sword. It also has the responsibility to protect the people around me." After that, he turned around and was about to leave. "Are you really not coming back?" Kunlun asked. He looked reluctant, and his eyes were red. He was already used to Xueqi's existence. He was used to someone watching him train. Xueqi waved his hand and disappeared. He entered the spiritless mode. The extreme spiritless mode made him move faster and faster. The space-time kaleidoscope around him turned blank. As his speed continued to increase, Xueqi could clearly sense the existence of a strange substance. This substance was similar to the space-time current but more profound and unfathomable. "Soon," Xueqi mumbled as he increased his speed. The white surroundings began to glow with all kinds of colors. The colors changed continuously. A silver radiance burst out from his body and engulfed him. The silver radiance turned into a long sword and dashed forward, disappearing into the horizon. Star Domain. Xueqi levitated on the Star River stairs. Intense flames surrounded him, and he held a long saber in each hand. His robe fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were filled with extreme murderous intent. With him as the center, the Star Domain was covered by the Sea of Blood. The Sea of Blood was condensed from Xueqi's murderous intent. Inside the Sea of Blood, there were countless chi weapons hovering in the air. It was extremely terrifying. The old prisoner from the Eastern Endless Kingdom stared at Xueqi. His tattered clothes fluttered in the wind. His gaze was cold, and the blood at the corner of his mouth disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the distance, countless living beings were on standby. Facing the strongest expert at the moment, they were all very nervous, even fearful. "Who is Xueqi?" Xin Yanxing asked Hongchen Supreme. She looked at Xueqi in horror. She had never encountered such a powerful aura. He was almost invincible. No, this was invincibility. This was the strongest person in the world. The hegemon of the Endless West, a peerless genius of ancient times, reputed to be the most powerful expert after the primeval three heavens, Autarch Crimson Dust said with a sigh. Would the Sword Emperor Divine Court be able to stop such an expert? "Where's Xueqi? Come out and face your death. If you don't come out, I'll slaughter the entire Sword Emperor Divine Court. If you come out, I'll only kill you." Xueqi shouted domineeringly. The twin sabers in his hands transformed into two ferocious beasts, but they still looked like sabers. Roar, roar. The roars of the saber beasts reverberated above the star's domain. The old prisoner dashed toward him again. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless air weapons shot out from all directions, instantly piercing through the old prisoner's body. Everything happened too fast. It was so fast that the five sword emperors, Rainbow Qin Saint Lord, Yuan Cheng, Jin Cheng, and the others could not see it clearly. "This?" Rainbow Qin Saint Lord opened his eyes wide and cried out in shock. He knew that Xueqi was very powerful, but he did not expect him to be this powerful. Xueqi looked down at the old prisoner's broken soul and said with a mocking smile, "Old man, you abandoned your descendants and worked hard for the enemy. You are really as loyal as a dog." He narrowed his eyes, and the magnificent Star River staircase below shattered directly. The explosion produced a powerful light that formed a huge centipede-shaped crack. The violent wind of pressure shook all the great worlds. The old prisoner's soul condensed again. He looked at Xueqi furiously and roared, "Xueqi, you don't understand your role at all. You think you are the strongest? You are just a pawn. You are not even qualified to be the protagonist of the tribulation." Xueqi's eyes turned cold as he said in a cold voice, "In that case, I will destroy the Sword Emperor Divine Court. I will keep your life until Xueqi shows up. I will let you see clearly what will happen to the people you choose." Rumble. His indestructible realm began to rage. All the chi weapons began to tremble. A horrifying power enveloped the star's domain. In the distance, Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Shaoxian rushed over with their disciples. Looking at the vast indestructible realm in front of them, they were all shocked. What is that? Such a terrifying aura. My God, is that Gujuagio? Master, can our Sword Emperor Divine Court hold on? Should we retreat? We can't affect anything at all. The disciples on both sides were terrified. Zhou Shaoxian drew her sword and charged straight into the indestructible realm. Sister! Zhou Tanhua was moved. He quickly chased after her. But Zhou Xiaoxuan's cultivation was already very strong. Zhou Tanhua couldn't catch up with her at full speed. The aura of the indestructible realm was rising crazily, making all living beings feel the pressure of a catastrophe. Gujuagio didn't erupt immediately. He seemed to be deliberately torturing all living beings in the star's domain. If you want to kill me, then come in. A calm voice floated out from the star hall, and everyone could hear it. Gujuagio's eyes turned cold. The indestructible realm suddenly stopped as he turned into a fiery wind and rushed into the star's palace. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the gate of the star's palace. Not good. Yuan Cheng was shocked. He immediately wanted to rush over. So did the others. There was a loud bang. When they were less than 30 meters away from the myriad stars hall, an invisible force blasted him flying out. However, they were just a little embarrassed. They were fine. Inside the palace, Gujuagio walked on the smooth crystal surface. His eyes were locked on a figure at the end of the palace. Zhou Xuanji. He was sitting on his throne with a calm look on his face. 3 legendary swords were hovering above his head, side by side. Serendipity Sword, Miracle Creation Sword, Great Enlightenment Dark God. 3 Kama Cauldron's sovereign legendary swords. Gujuagio asked coldly, "Where is my son?" Zhou Xuanji replied, "If I return your son's remnant soul to you, will you let bygones be bygones?" Gujuagio replied domineeringly, "No. You tortured him for so long, and you want to reconcile? Then give your children to me to torture." Obviously, his fundamental purpose wasn't to save Gu Tianlin. Then there is no room for negotiation. Zhou Xuanji slowly got up as his aura rose. Chapter 1032. So what if there's no discussion? Do you think you can kill me? Gujuagio said coldly. The twin sabers appeared in his hands again as he approached Zhou Xuanji step by step. Zhou Xuanji sized Gujuagio up and said with a meaningful smile, "This is the first time we met. You are weaker than I imagined." "No, I became more powerful just now." Gujuagio shook his head and felt that Zhou Xuanji had gone crazy. That was right. Most of his enemies would be terrified to the point of madness. This kid's condition was considered not bad. Zhou Xuanji noticed the disdain in Gujuagio's eyes, but he only shook his head with a smile. After experiencing the future, he suddenly felt that the ancient peerless geniuses were only so. At least in terms of structure, what was the difference between an ancient peerless genius and a mortal? The predecessors and their descendants all wanted to establish a new world. The ancient geniuses were still racking their brains for the sake of ruling over the endless cosmos created by their predecessors. The structure was not good. Moreover, Gujuagio hadn't learned the constitution-defying creation scripture or the Tao of extermination. So how could he have the qualifications to rule over the boundless universe? The corner of Zhou Xuanji's lips curled up as silver radiance radiated from his body. His aura soared to the heavens, and he was about to break open the roof of the star's palace. The fortuitous fate-slaying sword suddenly appeared. Sword light flashed. Gujuagio squinted his eyes subconsciously. Countless sword chi swept past his body, making him frown slightly. Rumble, the star hall shook violently, which made the living beings outside uneasy. Their hearts tightened, afraid that something might happen to Zhou Xuanji. Hong Qin's sacred monarch and the others were still attacking unceasingly, wanting to break through the invisible barrier of the myriad stars hall. Unfortunately, their divine power was unable to do so. "Your sword doesn't seem to have any damage?" Gujuagio said mockingly. He did not stop and continued to move forward. The next second, he suddenly stopped. He frowned and asked, "Where did that sword come from?" He felt that some of his luck had been severed. Although it didn't affect him, this feeling of not being able to see through him made him even more fearful. Fortuitous Fate Annihilation Sword. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile. Just when he spoke, Gu Juejiu charged up to him. He swung his twin blades and tried to cut Zhou Xuanji in half. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, 3 Karma Cauldron Supreme Swords appeared in front of him as if they had teleported. Clang! Clang! The saber and sword clashed, and the violent energy caused cracks to appear on the jade walls of the Myriad Stars Hall, which could collapse at any time. Gu Juejiu's 2 blades and the 3 cause effect Cauldron Divine Swords were trembling slightly. Zhou Xuanji flew up. He looked down at Gu Juejiu and said, "Have you heard of the Constitution Defying Creation Sutra and the Tao of Annihilation?" Gu Juejiu frowned and his pupils shrank. His heart was in a state of turmoil. How did this kid know about the Constitution Defying Creation scripture? One had to know that in order to learn the Constitution Defying Creation Sutra, he had begged the ancestral Buddha to learn the ancestral voice. Countless years had passed, but he hadn't even learned the ancestral voice, let alone defying the Constitution and creating a scripture. The primogenitor relied on these 2 Taos to create everything, and primogenitor also relied on them to unify the boundless universe. You have nothing, so what makes you so ambitious? Zhou Xuanji asked indifferently. After that he disappeared. Boom! He appeared in front of Gu Juejiu as if he had teleported and grabbed Gu Juejiu's shoulder with his right hand. The 2 of them instantly arrived at the empty space created by the godless state. Gu Juejiu struggled subconsciously. He looked around and asked in a deep voice, "What is this place?" He could feel the existence of time and space, but everything here was still. It was extremely strange. Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, "This is the extreme of speed." He activated the sword fusion technique and war physique straight away. The 2 Karma Cauldron legendary swords fused into his body, and he only held the Serendipity Annihilation Sword. His aura reached its peak. Imperishable stage. You. Gu Juejiu opened his eyes wide again. He knew Zhou Xuanji's cultivation. How could he reach the imperishable stage in such a short time? Zhou Xuanji charged toward him. The extreme godless state. Traceless divine shadow. Gu Juejiu was the most powerful cultivator in the world after all. Even if he could not catch up to Zhou Xuanji's speed, he could still deal with him easily. Boom! 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 Gu Juejiu did not move at all. A formless divine energy protected him, which prevented Zhou Xuanji's attacks from getting close to him. Deafening explosions came one after another. The explosions were the divine voice, and Zhou Xuanji's ancestral voice could be vaguely heard. Gu Juejiu heard the ancestral voice too. He frowned even more, and his fury grew. Damn! He could not learn the ancestral voice, so how could this brat master it? Jealousy took over his heart. He must kill this brat, or else his position as the overlord would be shaken. Gu Juejiu opened his eyes abruptly. His body swayed and disappeared. He moved about continuously. Every time he appeared, countless sword chi would appear around him, like blooming flowers. As Gu Juejiu's speed increased, countless afterimages were created, as though there were tens of thousands of Gu Juejiu. Zhou Xuanji also realized that he was not powerful enough to hurt Gu Juejiu. The difference in cultivation is too great. He's the most powerful cultivator in the world indeed. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart. If not for his godless state reaching its extreme, he would have been killed by Gu Juejiu instantly. Although Gu Juejiu was powerful, he was not as fast as Zhou Xuanji. Godless state was a lost divine ability. Only a few people had reached the extreme godless state since ancient times. Seems like I can only scare him off. Zhou Xuanji thought. In his eyes, Gu Juejiu was as slow as a tortoise. It was just that the tortoise's shell was too hard. During the battle, he could be distracted at will. He immediately activated the Constitution-defying Creation Sutra and the Tao of Annihilation. He wanted to see what kind of effect it would have if he fused 2 supreme Taos together. Boom! His aura surged and his physical body exploded. His soul was also on the brink of collapse. Gu Juejiu's expression changed as he cried out in fear. This aura! What is your relationship with Gu Zun? Gu Zun? Zhou Xuanji immediately appeared 3,000 meters away. His body gave off a silver light, looking quite similar to the future Sword Emperor. You know it's Gu Zun? Gu Juejiu, do you know this power? Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly, which made Gu Juejiu's expression change. He continued, I'll give you a choice. Retreat. And you deal with Nan Wujin. I'll unify East Infinity first, and I can return Gu Tianlin's remnant soul to you first. It's not that I'm afraid of you. I just don't think there's a need for this. If we fight to the death now, one of us will definitely die and the other will be heavily injured. That would only benefit the other overlords. Gu Juejiao's eyes flickered as he fell into a dilemma. Zhou Xuanji's aura reminded him of the nightmare from back then. He took a deep breath and said, all right. He actually wanted to retreat because he could not keep up with Zhou Xuanji's speed. The anger in his heart was stifling, and he felt humiliated. Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand and let out a trace of Gu Tianlin's remnant soul. Gu Juejiao withdrew his hand and sucked his son's remnant soul into his sleeve. He looked at Zhou Xuanji deeply and said, you. Very good. After that, he turned and left. In the blink of an eye, he broke through the frozen time-space and disappeared without a trace. Zhou Xuanji let out a long sigh. He immediately returned to the Star Hall to make sure that Gu Juejiao did not come back to kill him. Just when he landed, the Ancestor Lord's spirit flew out from his eyes. Chapter 1033. Don't let the two supreme powers fuse together so easily. The founder spirit said in a low voice, his face filled with shock and anger. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked, why? He suddenly felt a little unhappy. This fellow had always been hiding in the depths of his soul. Whatever he did, the primogenitor Lord Spirit could see through it. How could he endure this? He had to think of a way to expel the spirit of the Founder Lord. He didn't want to be stared at by the First Lord Spirit. The current environment does not allow these two powers to fuse, the Founder Lord Spirit solemnly said. Zhou Xuanji thought about it. The current environment? Was it Gu Zun's doing? Judging from Gu Juejiao's previous behavior, Gu Zun must have mastered the scripture of creation and the Tao of annihilation. Because of this, only Gu Zun could create a glorious, boundless universe. How long are you going to stay inside me? Zhou Xuanji asked softly, his gaze fixed on the primogenitor spirit. The First Lord Spirit calmly replied, you want me to leave? Zhou Xuanji nodded. Although the primogenitor Lord Spirit had helped him a lot, he could repay it in another way. It wasn't like this, where the primogenitor Lord Spirit could jump out at any time and catch him off guard. The progenitor Lord Spirit fell silent. Zhou Xuanji did not say anything and waited for his reply. After a while, the primogenitor spirit faintly said, I will disappear soon. I am just worried about you. Zhou Xuanji asked further, why do you say so? What special relationship do you have with me? You're the one who pushed for the Emperor Gate to recognize you as its master so easily, right? The primogenitor spirit shook his head and disappeared. Zhou Xuanji frowned and fell into deep thought. What did the spirit of the Founder Lord mean? He decided to reorganize North Limitless while thinking of a way to extract the spirit of the Founder. After thinking about it, he transmitted his voice to the astral domain, announcing that the crisis was over. The living beings surrounding the Hall of Stars in the outside world heaved a sigh of relief. Zhou Xuanji summoned the old prisoner, Jin Cheng, Yuan Cheng, and the others into the palace. Looking at Zhou Xuanji, who was completely unharmed, they all heaved a sigh of relief. My lord, why did Gu Juejiao retreat? Yuan Cheng cupped his fists and asked with a puzzled expression. The others had similar expressions on their faces. Zhou Xuanji gave a mysterious smile and said, I can't say. Next, the Sword Emperor Divine Court's goal is to subdue Northern Infinity. You can expand as much as you want, but you also need to pay close attention to internal affairs. Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement, but they were still thinking about this matter. That was an ancient peerless genius. The strongest in the world. Zhou Xuanji could repel the ancient genius without being injured. It was really unbelievable. I don't think Gu Juejiao will come back in a short period of time. I told him to deal with Nan Wujin, but I don't know if he will do that or not. We just have to stay alert. Zhou Xuanji said casually before waving his hand to signal for everyone to leave. He simply said a few words to calm his subordinates down. Everyone looked at each other and finally chose to leave. Soon, only Zhou Xuanji and the old prisoner were left in the hall. The old prisoner had already regained his physical body. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and said faintly, "You are already powerful enough to surpass the ancient geniuses? Before this, did you suddenly leave?" When he was fighting Gu Juejiu, he had paid attention to the Star Hall. Zhou Xuanji's aura was not in the palace. He was not running away. Zhou Xuanji's aura disappeared suddenly. "Yes, I went to another space-time," Zhou Xuanji said frankly. He did not intend to hide anything from the old prisoner. The previous battle had proven the old prisoner's heart. He was really working for Zhou Xuanji. If Zhou Xuanji had appeared a little later, the old prisoner might have died. The old prisoner took a deep breath and said, "Did you surpass the ancient geniuses?" "No, but the ancient geniuses cannot kill me." "I see. You are indeed the descendant of the original master. What do you plan to do next? Are you going to stay in prison forever?" I need to recuperate." Having said that, Zhou Xuanji nodded and waved his hand, indicating that he could leave. The old prisoner turned around and stopped after taking 3 steps. He did not turn around but lowered his head and said, "A great tribulation is coming. Be prepared." After that, he disappeared from the palace. Zhou Xuanji was not surprised. He understood that a great tribulation was coming. The collision between the Constitution-defying Creation Sutra and the Tao of Annihilation. His greatest enemy was the Cardinal Heaven. A Cardinal Heaven who had mastered the Tao of Annihilation. The unreachable region. A ray of light appeared in the absolute darkness. A silhouette was moving forward slowly within the light. "Is it here?" A low voice came. The light was extending, and he was moving forward without leaving the light. Boom! A bolt of lightning struck in front of him. The silhouette in the light stopped and cried out in shock. Such a powerful being exists at this time? Unreachable region. Evil spirits, do not disturb me. A thunderous roar came, so deafening that even the deaf could hear. In response, a long sword came out of the light. The blade turned around, and countless sword chi exploded like a storm that swept across the entire void. "I'm coming. Who dares to stop me?" A mocking laughter came from the light. In the Star Palace, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes suddenly. "This aura." He frowned and mumbled to himself. At that instant, he suddenly felt a shudder in his heart. He caught a trace of a familiar yet unfamiliar aura. He felt like he had sensed it somewhere before, but he could not remember who it was. Cardinal Heaven? Sword Emperor? Primordial Lord? He fell into deep thought. A while later, he took out the Master Emperor door and focused his divine sense on it. He wanted to put the Primordial Lord's spirit into the Master Emperor door. But he could not find the Primordial Lord's spirit, so he focused on the Master Emperor door. He felt that the Master Emperor door had some kind of connection with the Primordial Lord's spirit. This connection definitely existed. For the time being, he couldn't find this connection. After half an hour, Zhou Tanhua asked to see him. With a move of Zhou Xuanji's mind, Zhou Tanhua appeared in the palace. "Father, I need your help with something," Zhou Tanhua knelt down and said. Zhou Tanhua knelt down and saluted, his eyes full of worry. Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile, "What is it?" For some reason, when he saw his son again, he thought of the Sword Emperor. That kid should be Zhou Tanhua's descendant. After Gu Juejiu left, 2 of my disciples disappeared mysteriously. I couldn't track their fates. They haven't come back even after so long, Zhou Tanhua said in a deep voice. He didn't have many disciples, but he liked them very much. Zhou Xuanji nodded and immediately divined for him. Zhou Xuanji had seen all of his disciples. They were not bad. Zhou Xuanji remembered their aura. If they were still in the Sword Emperor Divine Court, Zhou Xuanji would be able to find them. However, after searching for half an hour, Zhou Xuanji still couldn't capture the aura of the 2. What happened? Did Gu Juejiu take them away? Zhou Xuanji furrowed his brow. With the cultivation of the 2, it was impossible for them to leave the territory of the Sword Emperor Divine Court during this period of time. At this moment, Zhou Xiaoxian also came to see him. Zhou Xuanji let her in. "Father, 2 of my disciples are missing," Zhou Xiaoxian said anxiously. Chapter 1034. Your disciples are missing too? Zhou Xuanji asked with a strange expression. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Zhou Shaoxian glanced at Zhou Tanhua and said anxiously, "Yes, you must help me find them. They are my two most beloved disciples." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said in a low voice, "How about this? You two go down first to prevent more disciples from going missing. Leave the 4 disciples to me." Having heard this, the siblings immediately got up and left. They were afraid that it would be as Zhou Xuanji said, that more disciples would go missing mysteriously. After they left, Zhou Xuanji also disappeared from the throne. He wanted to see for himself who was playing tricks in the Sword Emperor Divine Court. In the void, a Cardinal Heaven sat in a car made of skeletons, which was being pulled by 3 flaming divine birds. He was frowning, thinking about something. After the battle with Gu Juejiao, he began to wander. As one of the post-ancient sovereign 3 heavens, he was now on the run. He had lost all his face. He gnashed his teeth at the thought of this. "Cardinal Heaven, you are really impressive." A laugh came from the front, and it was filled with mockery. The Cardinal Heaven looked up and sighed. "Hunyuan Heaven, why are you mocking me? What's the difference between you and me?" Having heard this, Hunyuan Heaven fell silent. Although Hunyuan Heaven did not participate in the battle between East Infinity, North Infinity, and West Infinity, it was not as smooth as the rumors said. Although he ruled over South Infinity, he did not unify it. Some forces in South Infinity were stubborn and refused to surrender, giving him a hard time. These guys were very powerful, and he could not do anything about it. "Cardinal Heaven, if you join me, will you listen to my orders?" Hunyuan Heaven asked. He did not show himself, so it was impossible to tell where his voice came from. The Cardinal Heaven's expression changed drastically. He fell into a dilemma. Back then, he stood side by side with Hunyuan Heaven and even surpassed Hunyuan Heaven and Hongmeng Heaven in terms of prestige. Now, it was an absolute humiliation for him to be Hunyuan Heaven's subordinate. "Is that what you said to me before?" the Cardinal Heaven asked in a deep voice. Hunyuan Heaven replied, "Times are different now. You are not qualified to bargain with me." The Cardinal Heaven was deeply affected. Anger filled his heart. At this moment, he even had the urge to destroy Hunyuan Heaven. "You haven't even gotten your revenge and you want to give up? Cardinal Heaven, have you forgotten how Gu Zun rose to power? He has suffered all kinds of humiliation. You've always set him as your goal, so why can't you learn from his tenacity?" Hunyuan Heaven's voice rang out again, causing the Cardinal Heaven expert's body to tremble. The heart of a Cardinal Heaven expert had completely collapsed. The rage of vengeance overtook his pride. Several years passed. Without the interference of the Cardinal Heaven experts, the Sword Emperor Divine Court began to expand rapidly in the northern Endless Lands. They were unstoppable, and more forces took the initiative to join the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Zhou Xuanji did not personally manage these matters but focused on searching the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Ever since the disappearance of Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Xiaoshuan's disciples, many living beings in the Sword Emperor Divine Court had mysteriously disappeared. The impact of this matter was getting bigger and bigger, and it could no longer be concealed. All sorts of rumors were spreading within the Divine Court. Some believed that it was East Infinity's doing, while others believed that it was West Infinity's doing. Of course, compared to the general situation of the Sword Emperor Divine Court, this was only a small matter. On this day, Zhou Xuanji found the residence of a living being who had disappeared recently. It was a child who had disappeared from his home for 10 hours. His parents went to report to the authorities, and Zhou Xuanji happened to catch them with his divine sense. There were many cases like this, but the world they were in was different. This was a trading island with strict discipline. Such a case had not appeared for hundreds of years, so it caught Zhou Xuanji's attention. Inside the house, Zhou Xuanji observed carefully. The antique house was decorated with many porcelains, and there were ink paintings on the walls. It looked like a scholarly family. Few people would behave like this on a trading island like this. Everyone was busy cultivating or earning resources. There were not many living beings who were resting here. Zhou Xuanji suddenly stopped by the bed. His eyes were fixed on a small gap in the curtain. "I finally caught you," Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself. There was a trace of aura left on the small gap. It was very faint, as though it was about to dissipate. Over the years, Zhou Xuanji had encountered many similar situations. Only this small gap had a trace of aura left. 3 breaths later, He disappeared into thin air. He entered spiritless mode straightaway and traveled around the northern endless lands, searching for that trace of aura. About an hour later, Xueqi finally found that trace of aura. He quickly jumped out of spiritless mode and came to a frozen land. The bone-chilling wind blew. The land under the starry sky was extremely silent. Xueqi walked ahead slowly. He looked slow, but he was moving extremely quickly on the land. He came to a green stone stele. For such a stone tablet to appear in a world of ice and snow, it was rather abrupt. Xueqi slammed his palm toward it. Bum! The ice surface shattered, and the chilly wind blew back. However, the stone stele did not budge. It was not damaged at all. Xueqi squinted his eyes and took out the main emperor door straight away. The main emperor door descended from the sky and smashed into the green stone stele, shattering it into pieces. The main emperor door rose up. Xueqi looked at it and saw a black hole. The main emperor door rose up. Xueqi looked at it and saw a black hole. Let me out. Why? Why me? Kill me. Kill me now. Oh, Xueqi frowned. What happened down there? He used the exterminating divine eyes and looked into the darkness. Soon, he saw a pool of blood in the darkness. The surroundings were filled with blood chi, and thousands of souls were struggling in the pool. They wanted to fly out but could not. Xueqi frowned even more. This was a cultivation pool. Someone was refining these souls as cultivation materials. Whoosh! A shadow flew out of the black hole and charged toward Xueqi. In an instant, Xueqi leaned back and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. He looked over and saw an old man with disheveled hair. He was as skinny as a match, and his eyes were blood red. His robe was tattered, and he looked like a ferocious ghost. Xueqi took out his suppressive legendary sword and slashed at the old man, cutting him in half. It happened so quickly. The entire process was so fast that no one could even blink. Xueqi raised his left hand and swung, absorbing all the souls in the blood pool into his sleeve. You dare to ruin my plan. You are seeking death. The lawless region will be trampled over sooner or later. You offended me, the blood soul ancestor, which is the same as offending the lawless region. The old man laughed cruelly. His murderous aura soared into the sky. His body recovered quickly, and he slammed his palm toward Xueqi. The palm was too fast, and Xueqi could only parry it. Bum! He was sent flying backward, and the blood soul ancestor charged at him. Xueqi could only use spirit void mode helplessly. Chapter 1035. After entering godly void mode, Xueqi's speed reached its limit. The blood soul ancestor could not hit him at all. Xueqi fought with him while observing his body and cultivation. This guy's aura had reached the imperishable stage and was even more terrifying than Hongqin's Saint Lord. Although he could not keep up with Xueqi's godly void mode, he could roughly sense Xueqi's location. This guy is so powerful. Who is he? Is the lawless region really going to invade the endless universe? Xueqi frowned and fell into deep thought. The blood soul ancestor was furious and roared, "Come out! You only know how to hide? Why is the lawless region attacking the endless universe?" Xueqi asked. The blood soul ancestor laughed coldly. Why? Are you afraid? Yes, I'm afraid. Can you tell me the truth? You might be able to scare me away, Xueqi replied. The endless universe belongs to the lawless region. The lawless region was the universe before the ancient sovereign. The ancient sovereign was treacherous and killed all living beings to create a new endless universe. To the lawless region, the endless universe is the mortal enemy. Do you understand? I understand. Then who is the ruler of the lawless region now? Xueqi already knew how the ancient sovereign created the endless universe. Just like the sword emperors of the future, they destroyed and created again. When everything was turned into nothingness, a new order could be established. If one could not change all living beings, then they would destroy all living beings and create living beings that followed their will. Such a method of creation was quite selfish. After all, not every living being could be corrupted and irredeemable. Who is the ruler is not something you can know. Get lost. Or else, I will tear you apart first when the lawless region army comes. the Blood Soul ancestor said impatiently. He was going crazy. Who was this brat? How could he be so fast? Such speed gave him a sense of déjà vu. It was a pity that he had forgotten most of his memories. He could not remember the past. Xueqi continued to ask, last question. How did you come here? How many more people have entered the Northern Endless Universe? These are 2 questions. The Blood Soul ancestor roared. He slammed his palms wildly with divine energy, bombarding the entire icy land. Boom! The land shook violently as though it would collapse at any moment. Xueqi smiled and said, It's all the same. Tell me, I can't do anything to you anyway. I can't play any tricks on you. He could tell that this fellow was not smart enough. Either he was too conceited, or his spiritual intelligence had been severely damaged. Xueqi could clearly sense that the Blood Soul ancestor's emotions were unstable. He looked like he was about to go berserk. That's right. There was a great battle here and the space-time barrier was broken. Apart from me, I reckon that many other experts have already snuck in, so give up resisting. Blood Soul progenitor laughed arrogantly. He suddenly squatted down and slapped the ground with his palm. In an instant, blood chi soared and covered the ground. Numerous blood-colored tombstones rose into the air, turning the world of ice and snow into a blood-colored graveyard. Countless ghostly wails and wolf howls rang out, giving everyone goosebumps. Xueqi suddenly appeared with the Serendipity Sword and Dark God in his hands. With a wave of Deju's Dark God, everything turned dark. The Blood Soul progenitor's senses instantly lost their function. He couldn't see, hear, or use his divine sense. He was instantly terrified. What was going on? Xueqi swung his sword again. This time, it was the Serendipity Annihilation Sword. Boundless divine power poured into the blade, turning into sword chi as it slashed down. Puchi! 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 The Blood Soul progenitor's body swayed under the torrential sword chi like a sandbag. He couldn't resist at all. He could clearly sense that his fate had been severed. What divine ability is that? He opened his eyes wide, and his heart was filled with shock. His good fate had been severed. Although it did not affect his battle power, it made his hair stand on end. Xueqi activated the Gaze Sword domain. With the Blood Soul progenitor at the center, tens of thousands of sword shadows surrounded him and crazily attacked him. At the same time, he used world internalization to absorb the Blood Soul progenitor's divine energy. I can't kill you, but I can still suck you dry? Xueqi thought condescendingly. After reaching the imperishable stage, he did not know how to break through to a higher stage, but it was always right to increase his cultivation. The Blood Soul progenitor struggled with all his might. But no matter where he went, the Gaze Sword domain followed him. He could not pinpoint Xueqi's location, so he was in a passive position. Damn! He gritted his teeth and roared like a ferocious beast that had gone berserk. But he could only sense darkness. Under such circumstances, he could not help but feel fear. He would die. Xueqi would not show any mercy. This guy had refined so many innocent souls. No matter how he died, it would not be enough to vent his anger. Half an hour later. An hour later. 2 hours later. Finally, the Blood Soul progenitor's divine energy was sucked dry by Xueqi. He had completely lost his battle power. Xueqi did not show any mercy. He took out the main emperor door and killed him. Not even a trace of his soul was left. He retracted the Great Perception Dark Spirit, and the darkness disappeared. The icy land reappeared. The surface was covered with cliffs and canyons. It was a mess. Xueqi landed in front of the black hole. Looking down, he destroyed the blood pool. After doing all this, he left. He quickly found Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Shaoxian and told them about this. Both of them were very disappointed. The enemy was dead. They could not even feel hatred. They could only blame themselves for not protecting their disciples well. Xueqi did not comfort them. They had already grown up and had the ability to adjust themselves. After returning to the Star Hall, he began to cultivate. He completely refined the Blood Soul progenitor's divine energy into his own. 3 days later, he gathered all the important ministers and generals of the divine court in the hall. He told them about the Blood Soul progenitor and the lawless region, which shocked everyone. The lawless region. So there are countless old monsters hiding there. Could it be that the battle between Xueqi and the Cardinal Heaven broke time and space? This is going to be troublesome. Don't worry. They are the only enemies left. The situation is much better than before. This is the autumn of troubled times. Indeed, before the previous wave subsides, another wave rises. Everyone discussed among themselves. Xueqi did not disturb them. He wanted to hear their opinions. What comforted him was that these people were not afraid. The previous battle had given them confidence. They believed that the Sword Emperor Divine Court would not lose no matter who they faced. Yuanqing, you are in charge of arranging people to search for the enemies in the lawless region. If they did not do evil, you can detain them first. If they did, kill them immediately, Xueqi instructed. Yuanqing received the order immediately. Today, the Star Realm can hold a divine court meeting. The main purpose is to trade resources so that all the new factions can integrate. Xueqi continued to give orders. He began to issue orders one after another, and the Sword Emperor Divine Court became busy again. At the same time, the news that Xueqi had forced Xueqi to retreat officially spread to the other three factions. The name of the Sword Emperor soared into the sky. It launched a powerful impact on Xueqi's domineering position. Chapter 1036. The North Endless Sword Emperor, the East Endless Xueqi, the West Endless Ancient Genius, and the South Endless Hunyuan Heaven. For emperors of the current era, a new structure appeared in the Endless Universe. The Four Endless was unified. Before the turmoil, apart from the West Endless and East Endless, there had always been internal strife in the Four Endless. Everyone was guessing who could unify the Four Endless. Xueqi was the loudest. He defeated the East Endless royal family and forced back the Ancient Genius. He was only a little over 10,000 years old. Apart from him, there was no other genius as amazing as him. In addition, the peace in the Sword Emperor Divine Court was also widely spread. The Sword Emperor's benevolence became his greatest weapon. While the outside world was in turmoil, Xueqi was concentrating on cultivation. His cultivation was still far from the other three overlords. He needed to work harder. The Sword Emperor Divine Court's territory expanded more and more. It wouldn't take many years for them to completely unify the Northern Endless. The All-Star Domain's Divine Court Conference was also being prepared. The biggest attraction was the Sword Emperor preaching to all. It was rumored that the Sword Emperor had a magical language that could make the listener quickly enter a state of epiphany, regardless of their cultivation. Years passed. Almost every year, powerful cultivators from the lawless region would be found in the Northern Endless. These powerful cultivators acted recklessly and took pleasure in devouring the common people. They always caused a bloodbath. Xueqi didn't take action but left it to his subordinates. The Sword Emperor Divine Court was no longer what it used to be. There were already more than 30 imperishable realm cultivators. The Northern Endless forces were gathering at the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Some hidden experts couldn't help but come out to help Xueqi unify the Four Endless. As long as Xueqi succeeded, the Northern Endless would rise, and their subordinates would also get a tremendous amount of fate. The battle for fate, the time for serendipity. On this day, Xueqi was preaching to Jiang Shui. Xian Xianghua suddenly burst into the hall and interrupted Xueqi's preaching. Xueqi's eyes narrowed as he created a protective shield around Jiang Shui, isolating all movement. His ancestral voice continued to reverberate inside the shield. He looked at Xian Xianghua and asked, "What's the hurry?" Xian Xianghua rarely acted like this. It seemed that something big had happened. Mortal Supremacy and her sister, Shen Yanqing, are missing. Xian Xianghua said in a deep voice, her eyebrows full of anxiety. To her, Supremacy Crimson Dust was also her master. The two of them had always had a good relationship. Xueqi furrowed his brow. Recently, he really didn't care much about the mortal sovereign sisters. Subconsciously, he felt that they could take care of themselves. He immediately released his divine sense. After a while, he retracted his divine sense. When was the last time you saw them? Xueqi asked. Xian Xianghua thought about it and said, it should have been half a year ago. I went to find Hongqian Supremacy to ask about some of the puzzles of the Hongqian Qi. She seemed to have thought of something and continued,
By the way, her sister seems to have been praying to Buddha.
Could she have gone to find Buddha? Ancestral Buddha? Zhou Xuanji frowned and immediately felt a headache. Peace had finally been restored, but the two sisters had gone missing again. Could it be related to the destiny tribulation that Hongmeng Heaven mentioned previously? No matter what, he couldn't act as if nothing had happened. You can go down first. Stay in the stars field and don't run. I'll go look for them. Zhou Xuanji said, waving his hand. Xian Xianghua nodded, turned around, and left. Zhou Xuanji thought about it and sent out an extra soul clone to look for Yuan Cheng. He sent Yuan Cheng to search for the ancestral Buddha. Although he had seen the ancestral Buddha before, he didn't know where he was. Yuan Cheng was knowledgeable and knew much about the history of the endless universe. He might be able to find the ancestral Buddha. After Yuan Cheng heard about this, he immediately went to search for the ancestral Buddha. He wasn't sure, but he was confident that he could find him. Zhou Xuanji left this matter to him. And so, a month passed quickly. This day, only Zhou Xuanji was in the palace. Yuan Cheng came to visit him. My lord, the ancestral Buddha has moved to the lawless region between northern boundless and eastern boundless. He has opened up a new preaching site. Are you sure you want to go? Yuan Cheng asked worriedly. Recently, they had been capturing creatures from the lawless region, which meant that they had offended the lawless region. Asking Zhou Xuanji to go to the lawless region was equivalent to seeking death. Zhou Xuanji smiled calmly. I have to go. If you are captured, I have to go too. I treat you all as my own people.
The Sword Emperor will not just sit on this seat and enjoy the fruits of others' labor.
Yuan Cheng's heart surged with excitement. Many people said that the Sword Emperor could come this far because of his great luck and the help of many powerful cultivators. Only they knew that Zhou Xuanji was never a decoration. Every time he was in a desperate situation, it was Zhou Xuanji who turned the tide. Yuan Cheng took a deep breath and said, how many people do we need? Let me go and visit the 10 imperishable stage cultivators. With so many powerful cultivators, I can send you out with peace of mind. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and smiled proudly. In this endless universe, I can go wherever I want. If you follow me, you will only be a burden to me. Yuan Cheng was stunned. He was suddenly curious about what kind of divine ability Zhou Xuanji had mastered. Could it be the godly blank state? But Zhou Xuanji's godly blank state could not allow him to do as he pleased. Okay. Make the map and give it to me. Zhou Xuanji instructed. Having heard him, Yuan Cheng left immediately. After he disappeared, Zhou Xuanji continued to cultivate. In the Golden Palace, Zhongji, the clan lord of the Eastern Boundless royal family, knelt on the ground. He looked up. The palace was so vast that he could not see the top even if he looked up. Old ancestor, what do I have to do for you to help? If you don't help, the Eastern Boundless royal family will be destroyed. Zhongji roared with hatred, his voice hoarse. No one answered him, which made him grit his teeth in anger. Streams of blood flowed down from his eyes, and his eyes were quickly dyed red. Since you are all standing by, then the Eastern Boundless royal family shall change its name. From today onwards, there will be no more royal family. Zhongji stood up and cried out with a deep voice. Boom! A deafening sound of thunder came. How dare you! A domineering cry came, which shook Zhongji to his core. He knelt down again. This time, he was forced to kneel down. His right hand supported the ground while his left hand supported his knee. He tried his best not to kneel down completely. Zhongji stared at him furiously and roared. What? Do you still care about the Eastern Boundless royal family? These old things enjoyed the worship of their descendants, but when they needed their ancestors, they all pretended to be dead. Zhongji could not take it anymore. Sigh. A sigh was heard, filled with endless worry and difficulty. Zhongji looked up furiously, waiting for an answer. In this endless universe, other than that brat, who else is making things difficult for you? Another voice came. Zhongji frowned. From what the ancestors said, it was apparent that they did not want to be enemies with Zhou Xuanji. Who was Zhou Xuanji? Why could the ancestors tolerate him so much? Southern Boundless and Western Boundless. They want to divide Eastern Boundless. Zhongji replied. He gnashed his teeth in hatred at the mention of this. Chapter 1037. Got it. You can go now and appease the royal family. A royal ancestor's voice echoed in the hall. Xueqi wanted to say something but hesitated. He thought for a moment, then got up and left. He couldn't completely offend his ancestors. He still had to rely on their power. After he left, there was a discussion in the hall. This kid really has no respect for his elders. You can't blame him either. The great calamity of the boundless universe has arrived, and he indeed doesn't have the ability to help the imperial family get through it smoothly. After this calamity, let's change the clan leader. All right. While the Eastern Endless royal family was in turmoil, the Western Endless kingdom was not peaceful either. The news of Xueqio's defeat spread throughout the West Endless world, causing everyone to question Xueqio. Was he still the strongest in the world? Some ambitious forces began to unite and prepare to overthrow the rule of Xueqio. This made Xueqio very angry, so he started to clean up the mess. Comparatively speaking, Nan Wujin was relatively calm. With the addition of a Cardinal Heaven, Hunyuan Heaven's strength soared. They easily swept away all the experts in the southern Endless region and conquered an Endless region before Xueqi. Xueqi was not in a hurry to unify the northern Endless continent. His attitude was quite open-minded, and he advocated for the various worlds to surrender.
As long as the Sword Emperor Divine Court's resources and regulations were attractive enough, it would only be a matter of time before it unified the northern boundless continent.
The most important thing was that the Sword Emperor Divine Court was developing too quickly, and its foundation was not sufficient. It was unable to swallow the entire northern boundless continent in one go. At that time, just the expenditure of resources would be enough to bring down the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Xueqi had already established a righteous and benevolent image. He could not break it himself. While the northern Endless region was still developing and unifying, Xueqi came to the lawless region. He took the map that Yuan Cheng gave him and moved forward, looking for the ancestral Buddha's place of worship.
After flying for 8 days, he still had not found the ancestral Buddha's place of worship, nor had he caught a glimpse of the chi of the mortal world.
He began to question Yuan Cheng's intelligence. It couldn't be fake, right? Xueqi stopped on an asteroid and looked at the map, thinking seriously. This kind of map seemed very blurry, but as long as one probed it with his divine sense, a three-dimensional and magnificent illusory map would appear in his mind. The creator had used his mind to create it and condensed his memories. Divine swords appeared out of thin air and overlapped to form a sword chair. He sat on it and continued to observe. In the distance, a flame appeared in the darkness of the universe. This ball of fire surged and quickly condensed into a human shape.
He looked at Xueqi from afar and called out, "Hey, this way!"
Xueqi looked up and raised his brows slightly. Who was this? The flaming man turned around and left. Xueqi hesitated for a moment before he followed. He used the sword fusion technique in case there was an ambush ahead. The flaming man's flying speed became faster and faster, and soon reached a speed that even some undead realm experts would find hard to match. Xueqi had no choice but to enter spiritless mode and follow the fireman in spacetime. The burning man did not stop either, as though he knew that Xueqi was following him. After flying for an hour, the man on fire dived into a blue vortex, and Xueqi jumped in as well. In the next second, Xueqi appeared and found himself in an independent world. Spiritual energy was abundant, and the great Tao was rich. There were giant mountains in the horizon that seemed to connect heaven and earth. It was extremely imposing. The man on fire was nowhere to be seen. Come here. The ancestor Buddha's voice came suddenly, and Xueqi's heart jolted. How did this guy know he was coming? Could it be that the disappearance of Hongchen Supreme and Xin Yanqing was arranged by Buddha ancestor? Xueqi thought as he flew forward. There was a temple among the mountains, radiating a golden radiance like a Buddhist holy land. It was hard to ignore. Xueqi landed in the courtyard.
Looking at the gate of the temple in front, he asked, "Senior, did the 2 Hongchen gods come to find you?"
"Yes, they are right next to you." The ancestor Buddha's voice came, and Xueqi looked around in shock. Where is there? There was no one in the courtyard except for a big tree and some flowers. His gaze suddenly locked onto the 2 red flowers that were intertwined. Could it be? He immediately frowned and his eyes turned cold. He looked back at the gate and asked, Senior, what do you mean? Clang, the gate opened, and the ancestor Buddha, who was wearing a golden kasaya, walked out. He looked even older than before. He walked up to the steps and said calmly, "The destiny tribulation of Hongmeng heaven has arrived. You will face it too. Not only you, but sovereign heaven and Hunyuan heaven will too." Zhou Xuanji asked in confusion, "What destiny tribulation is it?" There was a destiny tribulation in the post-ancient sovereign three heavens? Who could cast such a destiny tribulation? Ancient sovereign? Progenitor? You should know that sovereign heaven, Hunyuan heaven, and Hongmeng heaven are formed from three heavenly laws. The heavenly laws' rules are below the Great Tao. They offended the Great Tao and have always been wary of them. Every long period of time, all the Great Tao will rebel and destroy the three transcendent heavenly laws. The ancestor Buddha did not hide anything, and Zhou Xuanji's frown deepened. Great Tao? What a joke! At their level, what could the Great Tao do to them? The heavenly law could create the post-ancient sovereign three heavens, so why can't the Great Tao? You must know that the Great Tao is formed from the ancient sovereign's will, the ancestor Buddha said casually. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. The Great Tao is the ancient sovereign's will? Didn't that mean that the ancient sovereign did not die? He had only fused with the boundless universe. The boundless universe could not be separated from the Great Tao. Without the Great Tao, the boundless universe would collapse. The rules would be destroyed, and space-time would be thrown into disorder. Except for those at the imperishable realm, no living creature could survive. Even the sovereign would be crushed in the chaotic space-time. Zhou Xuanji did not dare to think further. If the ancient sovereign did not die, he would be spying on all living creatures at every moment. Just thinking about it made Zhou Xuanji shudder. The reason why the cardinal heaven fell at its peak was because Hunyuan heaven and Hongmeng heaven were destroyed by the destiny calamity. He could not do anything alone, the ancestor Buddha continued to speak, pulling Zhou Xuanji's thoughts back to reality. Hunyuan heaven and cardinal heaven, which were on par with the cardinal heaven at their peak, were destroyed by the destiny calamity. Zhou Xuanji could not help but ask, "Then why did you turn them into flowers?" The ancestor Buddha shook his head and said, "It's not me. They felt uneasy and came to me. I'm the only one who survived the death of three heavens. I know some ways to avoid the calamity." Why didn't the destiny calamity go to the cardinal heaven and Hunyuan heaven? Why them? Zhou Xuanji asked. He felt that it did not make sense. The ancestor Buddha glanced at him and said meaningfully, "How do you know that they did not go to the cardinal heaven and Hunyuan heaven? Don't you want to know why they banded together?" Zhou Xuanji was silent. He took a deep breath and asked, "How can I help them?" "Have you already cultivated the Tao of extermination?" The ancestor Buddha asked with a passionate gaze. His expression became complicated. Zhou Xuanji nodded without hesitation. The ancestor Buddha knew the ancestral voice, which meant that he was half an inheritor of the unconstitutional creation sutra. You deal with the destiny calamity of three heavens. As long as you succeed, you will receive benefits that you can't even imagine, the ancestor Buddha said solemnly. Chapter 1038. Fate Tribulation? Zhou Xuanji frowned, but he did not resist too much. After all, he also had the identity of Hongmeng heaven. If there really was a 3 days fate tribulation, he would definitely be targeted by it. However, he was hesitating about when to attack the 3 life tribulations. He did not want to help Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. It would be best to wait for these 2 fellows to die before dealing with the 3 fate tribulations. He looked up at the ancestral Buddha and asked, "Can you restore them to their original forms?" The ancestor Buddha shook his head. "I didn't turn them into this. On the contrary, without my help, they would have lost consciousness." Zhou Xuanji frowned again. He suddenly felt that talking to the ancestral Buddha was very tiring. Seeing that he was silent, the ancestral Buddha sensed that something was amiss. The 3 days have been affecting them and absorbing their fate. They had no choice but to come to me. If I want to help them recover, I have to defeat the 3 days. At most, in 1,000 years, their souls will scatter. Given your strength, you won't be able to defeat the 3 fated tribulations. You must join forces with Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. According to my estimation, the 3 fated tribulations have already gone to find Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. If you rush over now, You may be able to form an alliance between the three heavens. Up until now, the three fate tribulations have only defeated the three heavens one by one. When the three heavens join hands, the tribulations won't dare to show themselves. The ancestral Buddha spoke tirelessly, trying to give Xueqi confidence. Xueqi shook his head and said, "Do you think I can survive 3 days of fate retribution with my power?" Ancestor Buddha replied calmly, "Of course there is. You have mastered the path of annihilation, so you have the ability to annihilate everything. You are the most suitable person to deal with the 3 life tribulations." Xueqi began to think about the pros and cons.
He was no longer the same as before, but in terms of fighting ability, he was still inferior to a cardinal heaven expert.
His true strength lay in the godless state. That's all I have to say. Think about it yourself. The ancestral Buddha turned around and returned to the temple. There was a loud bang. The gate closed. The courtyard returned to silence. Xueqi turned to look at the 2 flowers formed by Mortal Sovereign and Shen Yanxing. He sighed softly. Forget it. He immediately jumped out of this world, entered the spiritless state, and quickly flew towards the north. He didn't immediately head to southern infinity as the 3 heavenly tribulations wouldn't descend so soon. If he wanted to find Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven, he would have to rely on the Sword Emperor Divine Court's intelligence network. Yuan Chang had already arranged for living beings to head to the other 3 directions to monitor their movements. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. After returning to the multi-star domain, Xueqi summoned Yuan Chang straightaway. He told Yuan Chang about the origin of the 3-day fate tribulation, which left Yuan Chang speechless. There was such a secret? Yuan Chang cupped his fists together and said, "Master, give me some time. I will first get someone to contact Hunyuan Heaven. Southern Wujin is very peaceful now, and the 3 days of tribulation should not have come yet." He also knew that Xueqi was in Hongmeng Heaven and could not avoid this tribulation. Since that was the case, it was not impossible to join forces with the enemy. Xueqi nodded. He was in no hurry. Since he couldn't find the 3 days of tribulation, he could only wait for it to appear. By the way, my lord, many black holes have appeared in the lawless region. Our scouts saw many huge primordial fierce beasts appearing. They seem to be gathering in a certain place. They are too powerful, so the scouts don't dare to approach. Yuan Chang continued. Speaking of this, he frowned. The lawless region was a great enemy of the Sword Emperor Divine Court. It was a stone hanging over his heart. Also, we found traces of the lawless fire god. My lord, I think we can rope him in. I heard that he has enemies in the lawless region, Yuan Chang chuckled. Thinking of the lawless fire god's horrifying cultivation, he felt a burning passion in his heart. With the support of such a powerful cultivator, even if the ancient geniuses came again, they would have a way to stop them. Xueqi could not help but think back to the days he spent with the lawless fire god. The lawless fire god was powerful indeed. He was the most powerful being he had ever seen. Even the sword emperors of the future and the ancient geniuses might not be as powerful as the lawless fire god. If he could rope him in. Come to think of it, Xueqi and the lawless fire god were related. It was because the lawless fire god could help him cultivate the constitution-defying creation sutra. You want me to find him? Xueqi asked. Yuan Chang nodded with a smile. The lawless fire god is currently residing in a place. Do you want to go? Xueqi replied. Sure. I will rest for a few days, and you can bring me there. If he could rope in the lawless fire god, that would be a good thing. Yuan Chang heard him and immediately beamed with joy. Suddenly, a white stripe appeared in the absolute darkness. It was as though a piece of black cloth was torn apart, and a horrifying silhouette stepped out slowly. He was muscular and wore black armor. Behind him was a cloak that was condensed from green flames. He walked forward, and a giant sword appeared in his right hand out of nowhere. The blade was bronze in color, and its edge was serrated. You rebel against the heavenly law. You shall be executed. He spoke slowly. His hoarse voice was filled with boundless murderous intent. Boom! He suddenly transformed into a stream of white light and dashed forward, tearing apart the darkness and disappearing without a trace. At the same time, Nan Wujin. In a dark palace, the Cardinal Heaven opened his eyes suddenly. This aura! What's going on? Could it be him? He mumbled with fear on his face. He stood up immediately. Just when he was about to move, a silhouette appeared in the palace. It was Hunyuan Heaven. Hunyuan Heaven was shrouded in black qi like a tornado. Only a pair of crimson eyes could be seen. The life retribution of the 3 days is here. Get ready. Hunyuan Heaven spoke with a grave tone. The Cardinal Heaven frowned and asked, "So fast?" "It shouldn't be. Find a way to deal with him first. As for why it's so fast, it's no longer important," Hunyuan Heaven replied. The Cardinal Heaven took a deep breath and nodded. The two disappeared from the palace. In the pure white space-time tunnel, Yuan Cheng looked around excitedly. He asked with admiration, "My lord, your godly emotionless state has already surpassed the ancients. What kind of attainment is this?" It was so fast that time and space stopped. Nothing existed. Yeah. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly as he looked ahead. Suddenly, he felt a little uneasy as though a disaster was coming. He suddenly understood why Shen Yanqing was so afraid in her previous life. This feeling of uneasiness was indeed a little scary. It was as though death was coming, but there was nothing he could do about it. How strong is the life retribution of the 3 days? Zhou Xuanji curiously thought in his heart. He wasn't in a hurry. If the life retribution of the 3 days came for him, he could avoid it. If it came for Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven, those two guys could definitely hold on for some time. As the uneasiness grew, Zhou Xuanji felt that he might be the first target of the life retribution of the 3 days. After flying for a while, he suddenly exited the godly emotionless state with Yuan Cheng. In the next second, they came to the impassable area. "Lead the way," Zhou Xuanji instructed. Yuan Cheng nodded and flew to the front, leading the way for him. Chapter 1039. As Yuan Cheng flew, he communicated with his subordinates with a spell. He sent someone to follow Lawless Fire God. To not be discovered by Lawless Fire God, that person maintained a distance from him. After flying for about 2 hours, they met up with the scout. The scout turned into a black smoke and could not be discovered by the naked eye. He greeted Zhou Xuanji first and said, "Lawless Fire God is just ahead. He has already sensed my presence but did not attack me or leave. I'm afraid that he is waiting for your majesty." In the Sword Emperor Divine Court, everyone addressed Zhou Xuanji as His Majesty. It was reasonable for an emperor to address him as His Majesty. "You can wait here." Zhou Xuanji waved his sleeves and left so quickly that Yuan Cheng could not even speak. The scout looked at Yuan Cheng and asked hesitantly, "Don't we need to follow?" Yuan Cheng threw him a stare and said unpleasantly, "Can we help our master?" The scout was embarrassed. "Get lost. Pay more attention to your cultivation. If it were other targets, they would be dead already." Yuan Cheng snorted. The scout bowed and left immediately. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji could already see Lawless Fire God. Lawless Fire God levitated deep in the universe with his wings wrapped around his body. He was like a massive sun, and the surrounding asteroids were as tiny as grains of sand before him. "Senior, long time no see," Zhou Xuanji said. He finally understood that Lawless Fire God was waiting for him on purpose. "It's not that long. To me, it's just the blink of an eye," Lawless Fire God replied. He did not look up but continued to curl up without moving. Zhou Xuanji went straight to the point and said, "Senior, the lawless region and the boundless universe will fight sooner or later. Join me. If the Sword Emperor God Court can unify the boundless universe, I will become the court's divine beast and enjoy boundless fate." "Divine beast?" The lawless flame god laughed. His laughter was cold. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow. Did he say something wrong? "What right do you have to unify the endless universe?" Lawless Fire God asked. Zhou Xuanji replied, "I learned the Constitution Defying Creation Sutra. I'm over 10,000 years old and have already dominated the northern endless universe." Lawless Fire God was silent. "I also learned the Tao of Annihilation. Since ancient times, only a few people have the same cultivation as me. The last one was Ancient Sovereign," Zhou Xuanji continued. Boom! The Lawless Fire God spread its wings and a sea of fire engulfed the universe. Zhou Xuanji's purple robe fluttered in the wind as he looked at him calmly, unmoved. As soon as the flames got close to him,
They automatically extinguished themselves, not causing him any harm. The Tao of extermination.
He even learned the Tao of annihilation? Why? How did you do it? The uncontrollable fire god asked agitatedly. Xueqi did not hide anything. In fact, he also had some doubts about this matter. He transmigrated to the future and learned the path of extinction from his descendants. His descendants learned the path of extermination from him. The cycle of karma did not make sense. The only explanation was that the Tao of extermination came from the progenitor. When he was being imparted by the Sword Emperor, the spirit of the Founder Master also imparted the Tao of extermination to him. Other than this, he couldn't think of any other reason. Future generations.
Spirit of the primogenitor. The lawless flame god mumbled to himself with a trembling voice.
No one knew what he was thinking about.
He got close to Xueqi and asked coldly with a sharp gaze, "Do you mean what you said?"
Of course. I have enemies too. Aren't you afraid that I'll get involved?
Help me destroy the enemy. I'll help you destroy the enemy. A win-win situation.
It was not strange for the lawless fire god to have enemies. If he did not have enemies, he would not have been sealed.
Moreover, the lawless fire god had not caused any commotion for so long, which meant that he was wary of something.
Xueqi also had many enemies, so he was not afraid of one more. If he could take in the lawless fire god, the Sword Emperor Divine Court would become even more powerful.
In the process of conquering the other endless universes, they would continue to expand.
There were pros and cons. Xueqi dared to take the risk. Okay, you will be my master in the future, the lawless fire god said with a deep voice.
After that, he suddenly let out a long cry.
His voice was so deafening that even the deaf could hear it. Xueqi was enchanted by it and instinctively covered his head. Just how powerful was this guy's cultivation?
The lawless fire god roared for 10 breaths of time before shutting up.
Land on my head. Bring me to kill the enemies, the lawless fire god said. Hearing him, Xueqi leaped up and landed on the lawless fire god's head. Xueqi smiled and said, "Great, let's go to Southern Infinity."
The lawless fire god immediately spread his wings and soared.
He was extremely fast and disappeared from this universe in an instant. Yuancheng came late.
He looked around in fear and cried out, "Master!"
He thought that something had happened to Xueqi.
The lawless fire god's long cry was so horrifying.
Go back.
I've already subdued the lawless fire god.
Let's go to Southern Infinity now and wait for my good news. Xueqi's voice came into his ears. Yuancheng was stunned. So fast. Could the lawless fire god be plotting something? Southern Infinity. A massive fireball flew over from the depths of the dark universe. It was as massive as the sun, and all the stars along the way were crushed by its aura. Xueqi stood on the lawless fire god's head and said with a frown, "Don't be so barbaric. There's no need to kill the innocent." TSK, this is quite similar to Sovereign Hidden Heart.
The lawless fire god curled his lip and snorted.
Although he sounded displeased, he still kept his aura. Even so, the space around him still rippled visibly. Along the way, Xueqi began to admire the scenery of Southern Infinity. At first glance, there was not much difference between Southern Infinity and Northern Infinity. But upon closer inspection, one would realize that the great worlds here were densely packed. Each great world nurtured countless living beings. Some great worlds were like the Kunlun Origin Court. They formed their own pyramids and existed independently, protected by innate rules. Stop! A loud and domineering cry came. It had the power to suppress one's soul.
Xueqi looked over with squinted eyes and saw a god in golden armor dashing toward him.
He was only 6 meters tall but held a 30-meter-long spear in his hand. The cloak behind him danced wildly like flames. Humph! The lawless fire god snorted coldly and opened his mouth suddenly. Boom! The god's expression changed drastically. Before he could react, he was swallowed by the lawless fire god. Xueqi shook his head. He thought that the god was a powerful cultivator, but he died just like that. The lawless fire god opened his mouth and breathed out a mouthful of smoke. He continued to lead Xueqi forward without any hesitation. It seemed that the boundless universe was incomparable to the lawless region in his heart. Zhou Xuanji was even more curious about the deep waters of the lawless region. After he returned, he had to ask the lawless fire god. At this moment, a vast and boundless aura descended. Zhou Xuanji's expression changed slightly. So powerful. He was not inferior to sovereign heavens or ancient geniuses. Hunyuan heaven. I was wondering who it was. So it's the lawless fire god. Why did you come to my southern infinity to cause trouble? An ancient voice came from Hunyuan heaven, and no one could tell where it came from. Chapter 1040. In the face of Hunyuan heaven's provocation, Wu-wei fire god smiled disdainfully. Hunyuan heaven, you and I know who is hiding. My little master is looking for you, so show yourself. Little master. Zhou Xuanji's mouth twitched, but he did not retort. After all, even the fire god wanted face. Calling him little master was definitely better than directly calling him master. The universe was silent. After a while, Hunyuan heaven appeared. His entire body was shrouded in turbid qi, and only his eyes could be seen. He appeared mysterious and terrifying. He asked in confusion, Little master? What do you mean? Are you related to his master? The lawless fire god snorted. He obtained the inheritance of hidden heart revered. What do you think? Whole-hearted sovereign. As if struck by lightning, the turbid qi around Hunyuan heaven began to riot. How could this be? He fell into silence again. He knew about the hidden heart revered, an existence that was extremely far away. They were also extremely powerful existences. Gu Zun once said that among the grand beginning almighties, devoted mind sovereign was among the top 5. However, the hidden heart exalted had already fallen for countless eons, so how could there be an inheritor? Could it be the inheritance bestowed by the fire god? That was the only possibility. Sword Emperor, what business do you have with me? Hunyuan heaven asked as he looked at Zhou Xuanji. His tone was somewhat complicated. Now, Zhou Xuanji was on equal footing with him. He had never seen such a genius before. The speed of his rise was simply too fast. Not just strength but also influence. Moreover, Zhou Xuanji was in Hongmeng heaven, which made Hunyuan heaven feel even worse. However, no matter how unbearable it was definitely not as unbearable as a cardinal heaven expert. Zhou Xuanji climbed up by stepping on sovereign heaven cultivators. The 3 heavenly tribulations are coming. You should know about it, right? Zhou Xuanji said straightforwardly. He had to destroy the 3 fate tribulations first before he could dominate the world with peace of mind. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if the 3 fate tribulations suddenly found him during the battle. Hunyuan heaven nodded and said, That's right, he has already infiltrated the southern region and will soon find us. Do you want to join hands with us? If they could obtain Zhou Xuanji and Wu fire god's help, their chances of victory would be greater. The 3 heavens fate tribulation was not simple. He had once died in the hands of a 3 heavens fate tribulation. Fortunately, he had retained a trace of his soul. Otherwise, Hunyuan heaven would be another heavenly Tao. Zhou Xuanji chuckled and said, That's right, but I hope that we can come to an agreement. After the battle, no matter who is injured, no one is allowed to attack him. We will fight for the endless universe in the future. Hunyuan heaven answered without the slightest hesitation. Of course. The battle of the 3 heavens has always been open and above board, and we will never play dirty tricks. The fame of the later archaic supreme 3 heavens came from their mutual appreciation for each other, from the fact that they were evenly matched. There were so many legends, but not a single one mentioned their scheming. It was precisely because of their open and above-board battles and strength that they were able to shake the world and become legends in history. Can you find one of the 3 fate tribulations? Let's do it. Don't give him a chance to get stronger. Zhou Xuanji asked. From his perspective, he was not in a hurry to act after the 3 fate tribulations appeared because he was accumulating energy. He often had such thoughts in the past. If he was strong enough, how could he allow his target to live longer? Hunyuan Tian nodded. Follow me. With that, he turned around and left at an extremely fast speed. Zhou Xuanji immediately activated Godly Void mode and chased after him with Lawless Fire God. Lawless Fire God was shocked and asked, Your Godly Void mode is already so profound? Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, It's all right. Since ancient times, not many people's godly void mode can compare to mine.
Lawless Fire God rolled his eyes, which was very similar to a mortal's.
Xueqi knew that Hunyuan Heaven wanted to test his strength. This dog was traveling at full speed. If not for his godly void mode, he might have been left behind by Hunyuan Heaven. That would have been too embarrassing. Under godly void mode, Xueqi could accurately sense Hunyuan Heaven's aura. Hunyuan Heaven looked back as he traveled. He could not see Xueqi's silhouette, nor could he sense Xueqi's aura. Did I lose him? He mumbled to himself, his tone a little strange. Even if Xueqi could not keep up, Lawless Fire God should be able to. I'm in another space. Don't mind me, I'll follow you. Xueqi's voice came, and Hunyuan Heaven's heart trembled. This, godly void mode? Hunyuan Heaven sped up immediately. He knew that godly void mode was a special divine ability that transcended time and space. It was untraceable and belonged to the primordial immemorial divine ability. In the current world, only a few people knew it. Even if they knew it, they could not be like Xueqi, who could not be detected at all. He had really underestimated Xueqi. Boom! In the dark universe, countless lightning bolts interweaved, and the billowing fog billowed. Red and purple radiances flickered in the clouds, as though something horrifying was hiding within. The cardinal heaven appeared far away with a deep frown. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, Hunyuan Heaven came to his side and said, "The Sword Emperor and Lawless Fire God are here to help us." Having heard that, the cardinal heaven opened his eyes wide in astonishment. He had thought of looking for Xueqi, but what was up with Lawless Fire God? Lawless Fire God has already acknowledged the Sword Emperor as his master, and the Sword Emperor has received Sovereign Dedication's inheritance, Hunyuan Heaven explained. The cardinal heaven's face darkened. He had always wanted to seek revenge on Xueqi. But now, why did he feel that Xueqi would surpass him in terms of personal power soon? The more he thought about it, the more upset he felt. A wave of flames descended from the sky and landed behind them. It was Lawless Fire God. Sensing the scorching heat behind him, the cardinal heaven looked back. "Cardinal Heaven, do you still remember me?" Lawless Fire God asked mockingly. When the cardinal heaven was the overlord, he had ventured into the lawless region, and they had interacted before. The cardinal heaven took a deep breath and said, "Of course. Congratulations on your escape." Lawless Fire God burst into laughter and did not speak further. "Is he in front?" Xueqi asked. He could sense a majestic aura growing stronger. Indeed, the 3-day fate retribution was still being nurtured. "Yeah. He seems to have obtained some ultimate treasure." The cardinal heaven nodded with a grave expression. The most important thing now was how to get rid of the 3-day fate retribution. "Let's attack," Lawless Fire God said impatiently. Their lineup was enough to sweep across the universe. Why should they be afraid of the 3-day fate retribution? After that, he opened his mouth, and billowing flames charged toward Xueqi in a domineering manner. The temperature of the entire universe rose abruptly. The lightning was unstoppable, and the clouds dispersed. Lawless Fire God's flames soon engulfed the radiance. The cardinal heaven and Hunyuan Heaven acted immediately. Xueqi took out his suppressive legendary sword and activated Heavenly Sword Descent. Boundless divine energy was injected into the Sword of Light that was formed above him. The Sword of Light was massive and fell straight down. Boom! The light that was surrounded began to dim but did not disappear. A horrifying aura suddenly exploded. "If the heavenly law is defied, the great Tao shall be eliminated." A voice filled with hatred resounded, like a devil that had suffered endless torture and pain. Chapter 1041. Looks like he can do it. Let's kill him. Lawless Fire God snorted coldly. After that, he suddenly charged forward, and Xueqi felt that he was stepping on air. However, the Fire God did not bring him along. Perhaps he was afraid that something would happen to him. Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven followed suit. The three of them unleashed their divine arts and blasted the light in the clouds in front of them. The universe was blasted until it collapsed. Hunyuan Heaven waved his left hand, attacking while repairing the universe. Nanwujin was currently his territory, so he naturally couldn't allow Nanwujin to collapse. Once the universe collapsed, if it wasn't stopped, it would gradually expand until the entire universe was annihilated. It was fine if it was a battle between ordinary living beings since the universe could repair itself. However, the three of them were extremely powerful. Xueqi did not remain idle and continuously unleashed divine abilities. Heavenly Sword Descent. Great Chaos Sword Shadow. Great Enlightenment God Slash. Suppressing the Universe. Delusion Sword C. Under the barrage of attacks from Xueqi and the others, the aura of the 3 days fate calamity became weaker and weaker, but he continued to roar, filled with hatred. If this continued, he would definitely perish in the three heavens tribulation. Everything went smoothly. It was so smooth that Xueqi felt a little unreal. However, Cardinal Heaven, Hunyuan Heaven, and the Fire God were indeed ridiculously strong. Throughout history, it was the first time that the three heavenly tribulations had faced such a powerful enemy. It was normal for them to lose. Under the siege, the light grew weaker and weaker. Defying the heavenly Tao. The great Tao must be eliminated. The voice filled with hatred suddenly exploded. It was even louder than before, and Xueqi was shaken into a daze. Rumble. A terrifying shockwave exploded out, turning into a white light that swept out in all directions. The lawless Fire God, Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven were all pushed back. This power. Cardinal Heaven experts widened their eyes in horror. The unstoppable Fire God's eyes narrowed. Hunyuan Tion's figure blurred, transforming into a black mist that engulfed the light from all directions. Go! His voice was heard, and the Cardinal Heaven and Lawless Fire God immediately rushed forward. The unstoppable Fire God transformed into his human form, and the two of them entered the black mist. Xueqi hesitated and wondered if he should follow. Don't go! A familiar voice sounded. It came from his body. Spirit of the Primogenitor Lord. Xueqi asked in his heart, why? The spirit of the First Lord answered, I can sense the aura of the constitutional defying creation scripture and the path of extinction. What? Xueqi opened his eyes wide, and his heart was overwhelmed with shock. How could the three fated tribulations master these two supreme das? Wait a minute. Could it be Guzun? The primogenitors will become the great Tao of the endless universe, and the three heavenly tribulations were the convergence of the primogenitors' will? At the thought of this, Xueqi's heart grew heavier. Wasn't challenging Guzun in the boundless universe the same as courting death? Is there no way to kill him? Xueqi asked in his mind. Even if he didn't kill them, they would still kill him. The primogenitor's spirit replied, yes, but with your strength it's impossible. Just wait and see. These three might have a chance of winning. Xueqi rolled his eyes. He really wanted to strangle the primogenitor master spirit. After talking for half a day, it was all nonsense. The battle continued. Xueqi observed the battle quietly. The auras of the boundless Fire God, Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven were all very strong, and it was difficult to tell which was better. It should be said that they were three different extremes. Cardinal Heaven experts were evil and tyrannical. Hunyuan Heaven was vast and boundless. The Fire God was fiery and unyielding. Xueqi began to sense their auras and chanted the ancestral voice from the depths of his soul. Shockwaves spread out from the black fog ahead, shaking the universe. However, they did not cause any damage to the universe. Gradually, some creatures with powerful cultivations were attracted over. One of them flew to Xueqi's side and asked, "Fellow Taoist, what's going on?" This person was also at the imperishable stage, so he was not afraid of Xueqi. Xueqi glanced at him and said, "Hunyuan Heaven and Cardinal Heaven are fighting. I advise you to leave immediately." No matter where, there were people who were not afraid of death and loved to join in the fun. Double heavens! The person cried out in shock with his eyes wide open. In an instant, the other imperishable realm experts in the distance flashed to their side. What's going on? Did someone attack Nanwujin? Fellow Taoist, are you the first spectator here? What happened before? Such a terrifying aura. We can't compare. The chaos of war has finally spread to Nanwujin. Xueqi was speechless as he listened to the discussions around him. Did these guys have nothing better to do? They came so close to him. At this moment, a powerful cultivator dressed like a Taoist looked at Xueqi and asked in confusion, "Fellow Taoist, Why haven't I seen you before? The others heard him and looked at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and said, "You finally realized that I'm a stranger?"
Having heard that, the powerful cultivators backed off immediately and took out their enchanted artifacts to prepare for battle.
I'm Zhou Xuanji from the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Have you heard of me? Zhou Xuanji asked with a faint smile. The powerful cultivators were shocked.
Now, other than the old monsters who were always in closed-door cultivation, who had not heard of the Sword Emperor?
He was a peerless overlord who could rival ancient geniuses. Why are you here? One of them asked anxiously. Could it be that the Sword Emperor Divine Court was preparing to invade Nanwujin? Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "All of you, get out of the way. This is a matter of the post-ancient sovereign three heavens. I'm here to help Hun Yuan Heaven." He turned and looked at the black mist in the distance. The powerful cultivators looked at each other, not knowing whether to believe him or not. But since Zhou Xuanji did not attack them, they could not act recklessly. If North Wujin and South Wujin's plan to work together was foiled by them, they would be sinners. The black mist billowed violently. Powerful shockwaves swept out from time to time, which was extremely horrifying. Zhou Xuanji could not determine the situation and could only wait patiently. It should be fine for the three of them to work together. Zhou Xuanji thought worriedly. If the Fire God, Cardinal Heaven, and Hun Yuan Heaven could not kill the fate retribution of the three heavens, it would be a nightmare for him. The battle continued. Some time later, the black mist suddenly exploded, and the Cardinal Heaven cultivator flew out from within. He quickly steadied himself and tried to adjust his aura. His hair was disheveled, and he looked disheveled. He looked back at the powerful cultivators around Zhou Xuanji and roared furiously, "What are you looking at? Go and seal this universe. Or else South Wujin will be destroyed." The powerful cultivators were frightened and quickly left. If it were any other time, they might have fought with the Cardinal Heaven cultivator.
But now that the situation was urgent, they had no choice but to follow the Cardinal Heaven's order.
"Is there anything I can do?" Zhou Xuanji asked. "Just watch." The Cardinal Heaven snorted. After that, he charged into the black mist again. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and continued to watch. "Save me. You must save me." A faintly discernible voice came into Zhou Xuanji's ears. He frowned deeply. This voice. The fate retribution of the three heavens. "Save me. If you don't save me, the boundless universe will be destroyed, and all lives will die." The voice came again, but Zhou Xuanji was unmoved. These words were not convincing at all. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 1042. Zhou Xuanji ignored the voice and waited patiently. He didn't want to know the secrets of the 3 days' fate retribution so that it wouldn't affect his judgment. But no matter what, the 3 heavenly tribulations had already affected the safety of mortal sovereign, Shen Yanqing, and him. The battle continued. After about an hour, the terrifying pressure that enveloped this part of the universe gradually weakened. The results seemed to be coming out. A ball of fiery light dashed out from the clouds and came before Zhou Xuanji quickly. It was the lawless fire god. He quickly turned into a massive firebird and came to Zhou Xuanji's feet. After turning around, Zhou Xuanji landed on his head. "How's the situation?" Zhou Xuanji asked. The uneasiness in his heart had disappeared. It seemed that things had been resolved smoothly. The lawless fire god replied, "That guy is dead for sure. It's just that Hun Yuan Heaven and Cardinal Heaven will have a dispute, and it will probably be a while longer." "Controversy? What dispute?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously. Lawless fire god shook his head. "They want to take the life core of the tribulations to make themselves stronger." He turned around and left with Zhou Xuanji. "Should we rob them?" Zhou Xuanji asked with interest. Lawless fire god snorted. "Snatch what? They're courting death. Don't go." After saying this, he sped up, his divine energy covering Zhou Xuanji, not allowing him to turn and leave. Zhou Xuanji did not know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't really want to snatch it. The 3-day fate tribulation was most likely the manifestation of the ancient sovereign's will. What if it was devoured by the ancient sovereign? Zhou Xuanji had seen such things many times. Let's not return to the north first. Let's head to the lawless region. I want to look for the ancestral Buddha. Zhou Xuanji instructed. The 3 fate tribulations had been eliminated. It was time to bring the mortal sovereign sisters home. Ancestral Buddha? Do you know where that kid is? Lawless Fire God asked curiously. Zhou Xuanji nodded and looked ahead. In front of the temple gate. Zhou Xuanji looked at the 2 flowers and smiled. The unstoppable fire god was waiting for him outside the realm. It seemed as though the fire god and the ancestor Buddha had an unhappy relationship.
The fire god did not wish to meet the ancestor Buddha.
Why did you bring him here?
The voice of the ancestor Buddha rang out.
There was a tinge of anger in it. Zhou Xuanji squatted down and said softly, "Don't mind him. How can we restore the sisters to their original state? The 3-day fate calamity has been destroyed, so they won't be in danger anymore." "Are you sure?"
the ancestor Buddha asked.
"Yes." Hearing Zhou Xuanji's reply, the ancestor Buddha fell into silence. Boom! The doors suddenly opened, and the ancestor Buddha quickly walked out. He came to Zhou Xuanji's side and grabbed Zhou Xuanji's right hand.
Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "What is it?"
Ancestor Buddha frowned and asked, "Did the 3 karmas communicate with you?" Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji remembered the voice he heard and nodded. "No, it asked me for help, but I ignored it." "It's not communication," he continued. Hearing that, the ancestral Buddha heaved a sigh of relief. He said seriously, "Fortunately, you didn't answer. Then it seems that the curse of the fate of 3 days has fallen on other living beings. No matter what, this trial has been resolved." With a wave of his right hand, the 2 small flowers in front of Zhou Xuanji quickly grew bigger. With a flash of light, Mortal Sovereign and Shen Yanqing appeared. They were wearing the long dresses that Zhou Xuanji had given them. They were beautiful and moving, and as they slowly opened their eyes, they looked like goddesses waking up. When they saw Zhou Xuanji, they were stunned before looking at the ancestor Buddha in confusion. "The calamity is over. You can go back with him now," Ancestor Buddha said calmly. Mortal Sovereign and Shen Yanqing were pleasantly surprised.
They immediately bowed and thanked him. "Thank you, Senior Ancestor Buddha."
Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes and said, "What are you thanking him for?" "I brought people to destroy the fate of 3 days. He was just knocking on the wooden fish here." As soon as he said this, the 2 girls looked up at him in surprise. The corner of the ancestor Buddha's mouth twitched. He flicked his sleeves and walked toward the gate of the temple, leaving behind a sentence. "Leave this place as soon as possible, lest you bring me more disasters." Zhou Xuanji, the calamity in the endless universe has just begun. As the overlord of a region, you bear the brunt of it. Take care. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared from the temple. With a loud bang, the gate closed again. Zhou Xuanji didn't think much about it. Instead, he looked at the 2 girls and said seriously, "You didn't look for me when you encountered danger, but you are helping outsiders." Mortal Sovereign frowned and sighed. "We don't want to implicate you." Even now, they still felt that it was unreal. "Let's go home." Zhou Xuanji shook his head with a smile. With a wave of his right hand, he took the 2 girls away. He returned to Lawless Fire's head, and Lawless Fire immediately flew toward the north. The 2 girls were frightened by Lawless Fire under their feet. Zhou Xuanji briefly introduced him to them. "Humph, so you did it for 2 girls. What a joke." Lawless Fire snorted coldly. The 2 girls felt a little awkward. Zhou Xuanji ignored Lawless Fire. After spending some time with him, he realized that Lawless Fire had a sharp tongue. Compared to when they first met, this guy talked a lot, and his words were filled with thorns. He must have been holding it in for too long. After returning to the star's domain, Lawless Fire shrunk into a sun and began to sleep. This was good. Zhou Xuanji didn't have to settle him down. After returning to the star's palace, Zhou Xuanji summoned Jincheng. Jincheng still controlled the star's domain and had a high status. Zhou Xuanji told him about Lawless Fire, and he was very excited. With such a powerful cultivator in the Sword Emperor Divine Court, wouldn't their power grow tremendously? He immediately ordered his soldiers to spread the news so that no one would disturb Lawless Fire's rest. Zhou Xuanji continued to cultivate. He was almost watching the battle with the 3 fate retributions. He felt quite regretful. He didn't even get to see the true face of the three fate retributions. Next, the surrounding endless space fell into silence. Everyone felt pressured, as though a storm was brewing. There was no major commotion in the uncontrollable region. Everything was peaceful. Terrifyingly peaceful. 500 years passed quickly. This day, as Zhou Xuanji was comprehending the sword, Yuan Cheng requested to see him. With a thought, the gates of the Stars Palace opened.
Yuan Cheng rushed in hurriedly and cried out in fear. "My lord!
Things are bad." Zhou Xuanji looked up at him and waited for him to continue. Zhongji of the Eastern Endless Kingdom was defeated. A mysterious powerhouse barged into the Eastern Endless Kingdom and beat Zhongji until only a remnant soul was left in front of all the descendants. He said that he would defeat all the Endless Overlords and that Nan Wujin would be next. Yuan Cheng said fearfully. Although the Eastern Endless Kingdom had lost to them before, it was different. Even the ancestors of the royal family came out for this battle. But it was a pity that they could not defeat him. Zhou Xuanji was interested and asked curiously, "Did that person leave his name?" Yuan Cheng replied, "Sovereign Qin." Other than that, he did not leave any information about his background. Throughout the ages, there was no such person. Chapter 1043. Qin Zun? Never heard of it. Let him come. Zhou Xuanji said with an indifferent smile. The Sword Emperor Divine Court was not like when it was first established.
Now, the Sword Emperor Divine Court had as many experts as there were clouds in the sky, and there was also Fire God and the old beggar overseeing it. He was not afraid of any danger.
Yuan Cheng said worriedly, but he was able to barge into the Endless East royal family alone, and even those old monsters couldn't stop him. He's definitely very powerful.
My lord, although your last trip to the Endless East royal family went smoothly, you didn't encounter any of the royal family's old ancestors.
Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "It's not like he's coming to find me directly. Nan Wujin has Sovereign Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven, which is enough to make him suffer. Do you think that Sovereign Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven are not a match for him?" Yuan Cheng was stumped. Although Qin Zun was very strong, he didn't seem like an existence that could defeat the combined forces of Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. There was no such existence in the entire boundless universe. Gu Juejiu couldn't. Not even the Fire God. "You may leave," Zhou Xuanji said as he waved his hand.
He was at the juncture of enlightenment and did not want to miss out on the inspiration that he had obtained with much difficulty.
"Leave as soon as the marriage is established." After the doors of the Stars Hall closed, Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and continued his enlightenment. Ever since he stepped into the immortal realm, his understanding of the unconstitutional creation scripture had entered a stage of explosion. A huge and complicated cultivation concept was waiting for him to explore in the unconstitutional creation scripture. It was even more complicated than the laws and great Taos. It even contained the true essence of space-time. Zhou Xuanji felt that if he could completely grasp the constitution-defying creation sutra, his cultivation would undergo a qualitative change and leap to another profound realm. Omnipotent. Just like the founding master and the Sword Emperor. Everything could be created and everything could be destroyed. While Zhou Xuanji was still in closed-door cultivation, Sovereign Qin's name spread far and wide. Although Zhongji lost to Zhou Xuanji before, he was still one of the four overlords. Now that he had been defeated by Qin Zun, he had become a stepping stone for Qin Zun's rise to fame. For a time, everyone was talking about Qin Zun. Qin Zun wants to walk the path of the Sword Emperor and step on the Endless Overlords? It's not the same. The Sword Sovereign's fate energy reaches the heavens, while Qin Zun only has himself. TSK to trample on the Eastern Endless Royal Family alone, the first person in history. Let's see if he can defeat Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven. If he can, he will definitely be the strongest in the world.
Can our Sword Emperor Divine Court stop him?
Qin Zun's strength won the worship of countless living beings. This was similar to the situation when Zhou Xuanji rose up. It was even more exaggerated. After all, Qin Zun had charged into the boundless universe alone. Individualism is the most attractive existence, no matter where you are. The Sword Emperor Divine Court was also discussing Qin Zun. About 100 years passed. Nan Wujin exploded with a heaven-shaking explosion. Countless living beings heard it. Several days later, a battle report spread like the plague, sweeping through the entire southern endless lands. Qin Zun fought against Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven, but all three of them were seriously injured. Absolutely explosive. No matter who heard it, their first reaction was disbelief. Qin Zun became a god in one battle. Stars Hall. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Is this true?"
Dozens of figures stood in the hall, and they were all core members of the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Even the old beggar who had been in prison all this time came. Yuanqing answered, "It's true. Nan Wujin is currently in a mess, and the two heavens are seriously injured. The various ambitious and ruthless people of Nan Wujin are taking advantage of the chaos to resist and overthrow Hunyuan Heaven's rule." The hall was silent. Cardinal Heaven had brought them despair and fear before. Now, even Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven could not defeat Qin Zun. How powerful was Qin Zun? Zhou Xuanji had to be cautious. It seemed that Qin Zun was really powerful. He could threaten the Sword Emperor Divine Court.
Who knows Qin Zun's background? You can guess, Zhou Xuanji said as he looked at everyone. Everyone looked at each other, but no one spoke. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He was a little angry. The most terrifying thing was not how powerful the enemy was, but that they knew nothing about the enemy even after such a long time. They were not second- or third-rate factions. Now, they dominated northern endless lands and were considered the top factions in the world. The number of living beings under their control could no longer be calculated with numbers. Even with such a massive faction, they still could not find any information about Qin Zun. Zhou Xuanji was disappointed. The atmosphere became oppressive. Everyone sensed Zhou Xuanji's anger. It was their first time facing Zhou Xuanji's anger. In the past, Zhou Xuanji had never been angry at them. Jin Cheng said with gritted teeth, "I will send someone to investigate Eastern Endless Lands immediately." Qin Zun's sudden appearance in Eastern Endless Lands must have something to do with it. Zhou Xuanji nodded. The old beggar suddenly stood out and said, "He might have something to do with the Eternal God Gate." Eternal God Gate. Everyone looked at him with curiosity and confusion in their eyes. Zhou Xuanji was the same. It was his first time hearing about the Eternal God Gate. There were no records of the Eternal God Gate in the history of the boundless universe. It said that the Eternal God Gate was born at the very beginning, and there are unimaginable existences inside. The only record is from a legendary historical record left by the primogenitor. That historical record has already disappeared, and I only learned about it from my ancestors, the old beggar said faintly. Everyone was shocked. A divine item from the primogenitor's era? That period was also called the Primordial Immemorial Era or the Primordial Immemorial Era. It was used to describe the very beginning. Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown, "You mean that the Eternal God Gate has appeared again? What does it represent?" The old beggar took a deep breath and said, "It represents nothingness. Everything returns to nothingness." What? Everyone was shocked, and their hairs stood on end. What did that mean? Was Qin Zun going to destroy everything? That's not right. He did not do evil in East or South Boundless. He only challenged the Overlord, someone questioned. The old beggar shook his head and said, "This is what my ancestors told me. No one knows if it's true or false. Let alone the Primordial Immemorial Era. Not many old monsters from the Primogenitor Era are still alive." Zhou Xuanji suddenly thought of something. He waved his right hand. A silhouette appeared in the palace. Blood Dragon Ghost. The Blood Dragon Ghost was the servant of Full Heart Sovereign, and Full Heart Sovereign was not far from the Primogenitor Era. It was even possible that the Primogenitor Era had existed longer than Full Heart Sovereign. Not only the Blood Dragon Ghost, but the Fire God was the same. However, the Fire God's words could not be trusted. This fellow claimed that his ancestor was the son of the Primogenitor Era's first disciple. When Zhou Xuanji mentioned Full Heart Sovereign, he said that he was related to Full Heart Sovereign. In his words, all powerhouses in the Primordial Immemorial Era were related to him because he came from the Primogenitor Era. Blood Dragon Ghost, do you know about the Eternal God Gate? Zhou Xuanji asked. The Blood Dragon Ghost looked at the people around him before yawning and said, "Of course I know. You should all know that the sovereign serendipity that you are all crazy about came from the Eternal God Gate, right?" With this, everyone opened their eyes wide. The three sovereigns' serendipity came from the eternal God Gate. Chapter 1044. I remember my master saying that when the founder opened the eternal God Gate, it caused the Kunlun Origin Court to face its first disaster. In that battle, the Kunlun Origin Court was almost destroyed, and 80 to 90% of the first generation died. The Blood Dragon Ghost looked at Zhou Xuanji and said casually, "After so many years, could it be that the eternal gate of God has appeared again?" "That's great." Jin Qing asked curiously, "Why did you say yes when such a dangerous thing appeared?" The Blood Dragon replied matter-of-factly, "Then we all have to die, so we don't have to worry about how to survive." "Isn't that good?" Everyone was silent. Zhou Xuanji glared at him and said seriously, "Don't joke around. Now, an expert is most likely from the Eternal God Gate. How can we find the Eternal God Gate?" The situation was still uncertain, and Zhou Xuanji did not want too many unstable and unknown existences to cause trouble. "It's very difficult. Up until now, only the Primogenitor Master has personally seen the Eternal God Gate." He left behind a sentence, "Never ever step into the Eternal God Gate." The Blood Dragon Ghost said as it recalled. In any case, he had been sealed for countless years and was already indifferent to life and death. Right now, he was just muddling along. If he really encountered an existence that he couldn't defeat, he would be willing to die. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "Just tell me if you have any ideas, don't talk so much nonsense." The Blood Dragon Ghost shrugged and said, "I really didn't. Didn't you subdue the fire god? Go ask him. That guy has a special background. Back then, even the Hidden Heart Sovereign had to be polite to him." After that, he exploded and turned into blood qi that flowed into Zhou Xuanji's sleeves. Zhou Xuanji got up and said, "You guys wait here." He disappeared on the spot and teleported to Lawless Fire God's side. The Lawless Fire God was still in its sun form, not moving at all. Its surface was burning with raging flames, strong enough to distort space. Zhou Xuanji asked, "Fire God, do you know about the Eternal God Gate?" His voice could only be heard by the God of Fire. "Eternal God Gate? Again?" Lawless Fire God asked. "That's right. You want to find the Eternal Divine Gate and obtain the Paragon's opportunity." "No, someone ran out from the Eternal Gate of God and threatened me. I advise you to give up. Anyone who touches the Eternal God Gate will die." Back then, the majority of the Primogenitor's first-generation disciples died in the Eternal God Gate. Because of that, the Primogenitor fell into depression and mysteriously perished. My guess is that he entered the Eternal God Gate and never returned. Zhou Xuanji frowned. He had never thought that the Eternal God Gate would be related to the Primogenitor Lord's disappearance. No matter who it is, try your best to avoid them. As far as I know, nothing in the Eternal Divine Gate can stay here for long. Lawless Fire God instructed, which made Zhou Xuanji frown even deeper. What did that mean? If he couldn't beat Qin Zun, he would have to admit defeat? Zhou Xuanji turned around and returned to the Star Hall. "Your Majesty, how is the situation?" Jin Cheng asked nervously. With the strength that Qin Zun had displayed, there was probably no one in the Sword Emperor Divine Court who could stop him. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "The Eternal God Gate is too ancient, and he can't explain it clearly. Let's focus on the Divine Court and stabilize it. That Sovereign Qin won't be able to affect anything for now, so we don't have to worry too much." Even if he couldn't defeat Qin Zun couldn't defeat him either. The extreme godly blankness mode allowed Zhou Xuanji to be undefeatable. Everyone looked at each other and could only agree. However, Qin Zun was heavily injured, and would not be a threat to Bei Wujin for the time being. Even if he recovered, the next time would be against Gu Juejiu. Zhou Xuanji was the last. After everyone left, Zhou Xuanji did not think too much about it and continued to comprehend. No matter what, training hard was the most fundamental thing. He had a hunch. Qin Zun was just the beginning. There would be even more trouble in the future. Or even more. Time passed. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Zhou Xuanji's cultivation did not experience much of a breakthrough, but he was still immersed in it. What was worth mentioning was that Qin Zun did not appear in the past 1,000 years. Southern Boundless had fallen into chaos, and Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven had mysteriously disappeared. Now, Eastern Boundless and Western Boundless were ready to invade Southern Boundless at any time. North Boundless was the most peaceful. The Sword Emperor Divine Court didn't expand outwards and instead worked hard to let everyone have a good life.
In comparison, the reputation of the Sword Emperor Divine Court was growing by the day.
Quite a few living beings from the other 3 boundless realms began to rush towards the northern boundless realms. In order to accept them, the Sword Emperor Divine Court sent experts to open a teleportation array.
After all, the vast majority of living beings did not have the ability to pass through the impassable region.
On this day, Zhou Xuanji's understanding of the Constitutional Defiance Creation Sutra reached a whole new level.
From now on, he could begin to fuse the Constitutional Defiance Creation Sutra with the Tao of Annihilation without causing too much of an impact to his surroundings. His divine energy began to transform.
You finally reached this stage. But it's reasonable.
You have the sovereign serendipity, so you will succeed sooner or later.
The Ancestor Lord Spirit appeared before Zhou Xuanji suddenly and said softly. Zhou Xuanji did not use any special cultivation technique. Just like how he used to practice his sword, he only repeated the ancestor voice. After countless repetitions, the conditions were right, and he successfully broke through. Zhou Xuanji closed his eyes and asked, "What stage?"
The Ancestor Lord Spirit replied, "The stage above imperishable."
Whenever someone reaches this stage, the eternal divine gate will appear. Having heard this, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes abruptly. You mean that the eternal divine gate appeared because of me? Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown. That's right. That's why that guy put you last.
Back then, I experienced the crisis that you faced.
I won, but Kunlun Origin Court lost, the Ancestor Lord Spirit sighed. His eyes were filled with guilt as he recalled the past. He had let down Kunlun Origin Court back then. Zhou Xuanji asked, "What is that stage?
Why did it attract the attention of the Eternal Divine Gate?" The Ancestor Lord Spirit's expression changed as he said seriously, "Above imperishable is naturally eternal. This stage allows one to truly be eternal. Even if one's body and soul are destroyed, there will remains. It surpasses the universe and the Kunlun Origin Court. Every existence who reaches the eternal realm will face the Eternal Divine Gate's test. I already warned you, but who would have thought that the Eternal Divine Gate would sense your existence after you used eternal power once?" The fusion of the Constitution Defying Creation Sutra and the Tao of Annihilation was eternal power. Zhou Xuanji fell silent. He had never thought that Sovereign Qin would appear because of him. But it's fine now. You still have a chance to become more powerful. Hurry up and break through. Even though reaching the Eternal Realm will not make you invincible, at least it will be difficult for Sovereign Qin to defeat you, the Ancestor Lord Spirit said softly. After that, he disappeared from Zhou Xuanji's sight. He had been watching the outside world from within Zhou Xuanji's body. He had been patiently waiting until Zhou Xuanji broke through before coming out to tell him the truth. He was afraid that Zhou Xuanji's Tao heart would be disturbed. Zhou Xuanji nodded before closing his eyes and continuing to break through. He began to fuse the two supreme Das. Chapter 1045. Boom! The Star Hall trembled slightly, and the tens of thousands of astral guards below looked up in shock. What's happening? His Majesty is breaking through. So powerful. He broke through again. Such a powerful aura. What stage is His Majesty at now? Seems like Sovereign Qin managed to agitate His Majesty. Not bad. If His Majesty can break through, he will bring glory to us. The astral guards discussed among themselves. Admiration was written all over their faces. Although Sovereign Qin was already famous, in their hearts, the Sword Emperor was their true faith. A pair of eyes lit up on the distant sun. It was Lawless Fire God. He also sensed that Zhou Xuanji was breaking through. This aura. Could it be? Lawless Fire God was shocked in his heart. He had already guessed something. He did not move but continued to close his eyes. It seemed that deep sleep was the most important thing to him. Inside the Star Hall, Zhou Xuanji sat in mid-air. His body was radiating a silvery radiance that looked extremely sacred. Creation and destruction. The two extreme auras intertwined in his body, causing the entire hall to shake. He had already entered a mysterious state.
He was looking back at his life. From 2 years old to now. From a child to an endless overlord.
All the faces that he had met in his life flashed before his eyes. His divine energy was transforming, and so was his state of mind.
What was eternity?
Eternity meant always existing.
Just like sovereign Gu.
Even after he died, his will turned into countless great Daos that still existed and ruled over all living beings.
Xueqi's body began to turn into a star of light. He was transforming.
He fused his Tao technique into his soul and his will. After reaching the eternity stage, the body and soul were no longer important.
Will represented everything. Somehow, Xueqi felt that he was ascending.
A wondrous feeling that he had never felt before surged into his heart. It was not simply growing stronger, but it was like breaking out of a cocoon and being reborn.
Sometime later, Xueqi opened his eyes suddenly.
He was shocked to find that he was no longer in the star hall but above the endless starry sky.
He looked down and could see many worlds.
The great 1,000 worlds were dazzling and colorful. All forms of life were in his eyes.
Xueqi looked at his hands and realized that they were just illusory and had no physical body. Eternity stage. I see. Xueqi smiled. He was not too surprised. Calm and collected.
He didn't feel that he was very strong, but he felt that everything was so ordinary.
This was the case for the world, the universe, and space-time. Xueqi began moving. Under the eternal will state, his speed was extremely fast. His heart moved at will. Wherever he wanted to go, he would rush there quickly.
If he used the godless state, his speed would reach a whole new level.
Everything in the surroundings became pure white, and the vast whiteness shattered into endless darkness. Strands of purple lightning flickered and wreaked havoc, filled with destructive power.
However, when the purple lightning landed on his body, it immediately disappeared, unable to affect him in the slightest.
What's at the end? Xueqi mumbled to himself. He was suddenly interested in what was ahead. The boundless universe, as the name implied, was boundless and without end.
Above the universe, there were many different opinions regarding the end of the universe, but up until now, no one had an accurate opinion that could determine the end of the boundless universe.
Now that he had stepped into the eternal realm, he was qualified to explore. He kept accelerating, and the scenery around him was like an illusion, constantly changing. Boom! Xueqi suddenly felt that he had bumped into something and was stopped. He stared ahead. It was still dark, and there were no obstacles in front of him.
What's going on?
Xueqi reached out to touch it and found that there was an invisible barrier in front of him. It was very hard, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not break it. Could this be the end of the boundless universe? Xueqi felt a little regretful. The boundless universe had an end, but it was not really boundless.
He felt an indescribable sorrow in his heart.
Many powerful cultivators wanted to explore higher sceneries, but he had already seen the end. He turned around and rushed back in the direction he came from. He could sense the aura of his body, so he would not get lost. Maybe when the Kunlun origin court was born, the space-time barrier was closer, and it was opened up by the primogenitor with his supreme divine power. Xueqi fell into deep thought. He quickly flew back to the star's palace. His will fused into his body, and the sword spirit's voice came. Analyze that the sword owner has reached the eternal realm. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained Great Annihilation. Endless Annihilation Emperor Sword. Luck descending. Xueqi opened his eyes.
2 rays of dazzling silver light shot out from his eyes.
An unprecedented sense of power appeared, and he could not help but smile. Sword name, Endless Annihilation Emperor Sword Grade. Great Annihilation Description. A legendary sword condensed from the Tao of Annihilation. It has the power to destroy everything, even the entire boundless universe. It is still being nurtured and cannot be used yet. Luck descending. Subduing the fate of all with the eternal will. Turning fate into a weapon for one's own use. A legendary sword of the highest grade at the moment. A mysterious and powerful divine ability. Xueqi was very satisfied. Although the Endless Annihilation Emperor Sword was still being nurtured, at least it had appeared. It would appear in his hands soon. How powerful was the legendary sword that destroyed the boundless universe? Zhou Xuanji guessed that even if he had the endless annihilation emperor sword, he would not be able to use it easily. If the boundless universe was destroyed, he would cease to exist. His eternal realm was based on the ancient sovereign's will. If even the ancient sovereign's will was destroyed, how could he survive? Moreover, there must be a threshold to use this legendary sword. Although the legendary swords created by the Supreme Legendary Sword System were always more powerful than his, there must be a threshold to use them. Zhou Xuanji immediately understood luck descending. He opened his eyes again and waved his right hand. The primogenitor spirit appeared before him. After stepping into the eternal realm, Zhou Xuanji could sense the primogenitor spirit's presence. This time, he was going to suppress the primogenitor spirit in the Master Emperor's door. This was to prevent this old guy from spying on him. Not bad. You have just stepped into the eternal realm. Currently you are at the first level of will. The primogenitor spirit looked at Zhou Xuanji and smiled satisfactorily. Zhou Xuanji smiled. Is that so? I will need your guidance in the future. I will have to trouble you to stay in your precious door for now. The primogenitor spirit was silent. Zhou Xuanji was not in a hurry and waited for him to speak. A while later, the primogenitor spirit said faintly, "Do you really want to do this?" Zhou Xuanji nodded seriously. Seeing this, the primogenitor spirit could only sigh. Zhou Xuanji smiled and sent him into the Master Emperor's door. He added his will into the Master Emperor's door to form a protective layer to prevent other living beings from detecting the primogenitor spirit's presence. After doing all this, Zhou Xuanji got up and walked toward the Stars Palace's door. After breaking through to the Eternal Realm, Zhou Xuanji's mental state was different. He was in a good mood and decided to preach the Tao to everyone in the Stars Realm again. Chapter 1046. Zhou Xuanji did not immediately preach the Tao. Instead, he wanted to walk around the Sword Emperor Divine Court and see how the Divine Court was developing. From immemorial ride to karma, one might not be able to truly feel it. He strolled through the starry sky. It looked like he was taking a leisurely stroll, but he was actually very fast. He crossed thousands of stars and worlds with a single step. He suddenly thought of Zhou Tanhua and Zhou Shaoxian. What were those two little guys doing? He immediately searched for the scent of his children. This pair of siblings had established their own sword lineages, and their reputations in the Sword Emperor Divine Court had risen. They had inherited Zhou Xuanji's talent and rarely had opponents at the same cultivation level. Adding on the Sword Emperor Divine Court's background, their sword system attracted the interest of many creatures. The Sword Emperor was the current ruler of Boundless North. His legend caused the Way of the Sword to be extremely popular, and countless living beings started to walk on the path of the Way of the Sword. Any great swordsman began to become famous. Zhou Xuanji first found Zhou Xiaoshuan's sword-style sect. Just like those great worlds, the sect was hidden in a sand-like independent space. Zhou Xuanji forcefully stepped into the independent world, and just as he entered, he heard the clamoring. As far as the eye could see, the peaks of the mountains were filled with figures practicing swordsmanship. Clouds and mist surged and sword shadows appeared one after another. It was a spectacular scene. Zhou Xuanji smiled and nodded in satisfaction. Following his gaze, he saw a white-robed Zhou Shaoxian meditating on top of a mountain peak. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, giving her an otherworldly aura. This girl already had the feeling of Xian Xionghua's arrogance. Like father like son. Zhou Xuanji did not disturb her and only watched quietly. After watching for a while, he came to the world of Zhou Tanhua's sect. Compared to Zhou Xiaoshuan's sect, this place was much more deserted. Zhou Tanhua only had a dozen or so disciples, and they were scattered all over the place to practice swordsmanship alone. Solitude. Determination. This was the feeling expressed by every disciple. For some reason, Zhou Xuanji suddenly remembered the scenes of him training with the sword when he was young. But at that time he had company. Jiang Shui, Zhao Congjian, Bei Shao Wangjian, and Huang Lianxin would train with him, so he would not be lonely. Zhou Tanhua was holding a sword and pondering silently. Zhou Xuanji came up behind him and asked softly, "What are you thinking about?" As soon as these words came out, Zhou Tanhua was startled. He instinctively turned around and only relaxed when he saw Zhou Xuanji. He stood up, bowed and asked, "Father, why are you here?"
Xueqi looked at the sword in his hand and smiled. Do you feel that your sword is not worthy of your power?
Zhou Tanhua's face was filled with embarrassment. Ever since he was young, Xueqi had taught him not to look down on his own sword. So every time he looked down on his own sword, he would feel a deep sense of guilt. As time passed, he was tormented. Give me your sword, Xueqi said with a smile. As his voice fell, the sword in Zhou Tanhua's hand flew into his hand. He directly imbued his eternal will into the blade. He used his will to refine this sword.
Zhou Tanhua's eyes widened and his mouth opened slightly.
What a vast aura!
Father is already so powerful?
Zhou Tanhua was extremely shocked. He knew that Xueqi had been cultivating in seclusion, but he didn't expect him to be this powerful. He could not understand Xueqi's realm at all. Not long after, Xueqi returned his sword to him. This is... Zhou Tanhua's pupils shook. He couldn't believe his eyes. He gripped his sword and felt the vast power. He could no longer control his emotions. Too powerful. With this sword, his strength would undergo an earth-shattering change. Most importantly, he could use this sword without any hindrance. He could control it with ease. It was even easier than before. He looked at his father and asked in surprise, "Father, isn't this bad?" Ever since he was young, Xueqi had been strict with him. He made him understand that there were no shortcuts in the world. This is also a test for you. You can use this sword boldly. But what you do with it is your choice, Xueqi said with a meaningful smile. After speaking, he disappeared into thin air. He came and went without a trace. He didn't even leave a trace of his aura. Zhou Tanhua, holding the sword, fell into deep thought. On the other side, Xueqi came to the starry sky. He was hesitating whether he should give Zhou Shaoxian a gift or not. On second thought, Zhou Shaoxian didn't need it. He continued to travel around the Sword Emperor Divine Court. It took him 2 days to visit the entire Sword Emperor Divine Court. He returned to the Stars Hall and spread his will, covering the entire Sword Emperor Divine Court. I am the Sword Emperor. Today, I will preach the sword's way of all beings. I hope all of you will gain something. Xueqi's voice resounded throughout the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Before everyone could react, he had already begun preaching. Once the ancestral voice came out, no matter how high one's cultivation was, they would have the opportunity to gain enlightenment. Unstoppable Fire God opened his eyes suddenly and mumbled, "This kid is really generous." The ancestral voice was extremely precious. Ordinary people wouldn't leak it even if they mastered it. But Xueqi preached to the entire Sword Emperor Divine Court and wasn't afraid of being surpassed by his subordinates. This generosity reminded him of the sages of the Tai Chu immemorial era. He smiled and closed his eyes. The sun hung quietly in the universe, motionless. The lively stars field also quietened down. In the unstoppable region, on a barren meteorite, a man in black armor suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were blood-red, and his pupils couldn't be seen. He mumbled, ancestral voice. That direction is northern infinity. Who is using the ancestral voice wantonly? He frowned, and his tone was filled with doubt. He began listening carefully. The more he listened, the more shocked he became. Eternal will. No wonder it can cover the entire northern infinity. Who is it? The man in black armor mumbled to himself with fear on his face. How many years had it been? It had been a long time since an eternal cultivator was born in the boundless universe. The last eternal cultivator was Gu Zun. He took a deep breath and mumbled, "Seems like I can't offend northern infinity." He immediately got up and disappeared instantly. In front of the temple, the ancestor Buddha sat under a tree. A gentle breeze blew past, and he opened his eyes suddenly. He frowned, and his face was filled with anger. This brat dared to defile the ancestral voice. But why can I hear it from so far away? The ancestor Buddha was puzzled. Could it be that Xueqi's understanding of the ancestral voice had surpassed his? Impossible. He was the one who taught Xueqi the ancestral voice. He knew how difficult it was to cultivate the ancestral voice. He thought about it and decided to go to northern infinity. He entered spiritless mode straightaway and traveled through time and space. The space-time kaleidoscope kept rewinding. The ancestor Buddha listened to Zhou Xuanji's ancestral voice as he traveled. He was shocked in his heart. He felt like he had an epiphany too. Zhou Xuanji's ancestral voice could affect him. This meant that Zhou Xuanji's ancestral voice had surpassed his, and not just by a little. Brat, how long has it been? What serendipity did you receive? Could it be?
The ancestor Buddha mumbled to himself.
He suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 1047. Zhou Xuanji narrated the ancestral voice in the star's palace. He was very relaxed, and everyone else was listening to him comfortably. Gradually, as he narrated the ancestral voice, he took out the miracle creation sword and serendipity annihilation sword and began practicing the sword in the palace. Practicing the sword after attaining the eternal realm was a different experience.
He felt that the sword in his hand was no longer a sword.
His Tao was unclear. All in all, he felt that the sword was lighter. No matter where it slashed, there would be no obstruction. The eternal realm and the imperishable realm were like the difference between mortals and immortals. He closed his eyes, but the corner of his lips was curled up. Years passed. Every day, living beings in the northern infinity had different breakthroughs. 10 years later, the ancestral voice stopped abruptly, and everyone woke up from their enlightenment. These 10 years were almost static for the northern infinity. All living beings were cultivating. This is unbelievable. What cultivation stage has the Sword Emperor reached? He's too powerful. He owes us so much that we can't repay him even if we die. Among the current endless overlords, no one is more suitable than our Sword Emperor to unify the four infinities. I broke through. I broke through. Ha ha ha. From today onwards, I owe the Sword Emperor a favor. In every corner of the northern infinity, living beings were singing the Sword Emperor's benevolence. In the Kunlun Origin Court, the Emperor's Sword Divine Range was cheering too. They were the most honored because they were the Sword Emperor's true disciples and grand disciples. After Zhou Xuanji stopped the ancestral voice, he put away his swords. Come in, he said with a smile. After that, the ancestor Buddha tore the space apart and stepped into the star's palace. He looked at Zhou Xuanji with a complicated expression. Why? You don't recognize me? Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. Zhou Xuanji had always wanted to subdue the ancestor Buddha. In the endless universe, other than him, only the ancestor Buddha knew the ancestral voice, which meant that the ancestor Buddha had the possibility to reach the eternal realm. So far, Zhou Xuanji only knew that learning the Constitution Defiance Creation Sutra and the Tao of Annihilation could help him reach the eternal realm. What happened to you after we parted? Why can't I see through you? The ancestor Buddha asked solemnly. Zhou Xuanji replied with a smile. A moment of enlightenment and eternity. Do you understand? The ancestral Buddha frowned. His face filled with doubt. Work for me. You've been hiding in the temple all this time because you want your ancestral sound to reach a higher level, right? Work for me, and I will help you improve further, even surpassing heights that you did not even dare to imagine before, Zhou Xuanji said with a smile, his tone filled with provocation. When the ancestral Buddha heard this, his heart palpitated. But how could he work for Zhou Xuanji? What kind of status did he have? Did this kid deserve it? Zhou Xuanji saw through his thoughts and said with a smile, How about we spar? Hearing this, the ancestral Buddha narrowed his eyes. The atmosphere between the two became delicate. Even now, Zhou Xuanji did not know how powerful the Buddha ancestor was. All right. The ancestral Buddha agreed. The two of them jumped out of the Hall of Stars and entered the space-time kaleidoscope. This was the space-time created by the collision between the two of them in the ethereal state. Fighting here wouldn't affect the boundless universe. Your spiritless state is pretty decent. You can connect directly with me. The ancestor Buddha said seriously. Zhou Xuanji took out the great perception dark god, and his body turned incorporeal like a beam of light. The ancestor Buddha's expression changed slightly. He raised his right hand, and his sleeve slid down, revealing a string of prayer beads. His entire body shined with golden light, and he charged at Zhou Xuanji with the prayer beads in his hand. Boom! 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 Rings of golden light shot out from his body and slammed into Zhou Xuanji's body. However, These rings of golden light did not harm Xueqi and directly pierced through his body. Xueqi raised his sword and walked out. His aura was not very powerful, but it gave off an otherworldly feeling. It was as if no matter what he encountered, he would not die, and his will would last forever. The ancestor Buddha's expression greatly changed. He chanted in the ancestral voice, and his aura exploded. He raised his palm and slammed it towards Xueqi. The two of them were hundreds of meters apart, but as he slammed his palm out, the ancestor Buddha arrived in front of Xueqi in an instant. His right palm slammed into Xueqi's chest, and waves of golden runes appeared, wrapping around Xueqi's body like a spiderweb. Xueqi raised his eyebrows, and he felt that the space-time around him had been locked. If it was before, he would have been instantly subdued. But now, his will was eternal, and he was not affected. At this moment, Xueqi said with a smile, "You are powerful indeed, but I'm already at another stage. Show me your true power." He shook his right shoulder and pushed the ancestor Buddha back. The ancestor Buddha disappeared into thin air. In the next second, he came to Xueqi's back. He turned around and waved his hand, and the prayer beads grew bigger and wrapped around Xueqi like a collar. Next, the prayer beads became scorching hot and expanded rapidly. They turned into giant suns and engulfed Xueqi. The ancestor Buddha raised his arms and cried out, "Myriad suns-linked beads, suppress and destroy." Boom! A horrifying explosion. The suns exploded, shattering the space-time kaleidoscope. Endless darkness swept toward Xueqi along with a violent gale. The ancestor Buddha waved his palm continuously in the frenzy of flames. Strings of prayer beads shot out and turned into small suns. They fell into the explosion and caused a series of explosions. The horrifying aura had already affected the endless space-time in the north. Spatial ripples were produced in many domains. Within the star domain, Wu-Wei Fire God opened his eyes suddenly, and a baleful aura burst out. "Who's fighting?" he thought in shock. The ancestor Buddha and Xueqi? What's going on? Just when he was about to reinforce them, the flames on the sun's surface raised a tempest. But the next moment, he stopped. This brat! Wu-Wei Fire God was shocked. He disappeared into thin air, and the surrounding universe darkened. Amid the explosions, a silvery figure walked forward slowly. It was Xueqi. Facing the ancestor Buddha's explosion, he was not affected at all. He took out the coercive sword and absorbed the ancestor Buddha's aura. With the support of the eternal will, the coercive sword transformed and could easily absorb the ancestor Buddha's aura. He's powerful indeed. He's not weaker than Sovereign Heaven and Gujuagio. Xueqi laughed softly. He looked forward to the ancestor Buddha even more. With such a powerful cultivator joining the Sword Emperor Divine Court, who could stop Wu-Wei Fire God? As for Sovereign Qin, he had the confidence to face him alone. The ancestor Buddha's expression changed. He saw Xueqi's silhouette and cried out in shock, "Impossible!" How powerful was he? Gujuagio was so eager to learn the ancestral voice, but he did not dare to attack him. It was because of his prowess that he could survive until now. He had not fought like this for a long time. But he could not hurt Xueqi at all. While he was shocked, he was also frustrated. Could it be that he had fallen behind? Xueqi came to his side suddenly and slashed horizontally. Just as the sword was about to reach his throat, the blade turned and hit the ancestor Buddha's throat with a flat surface. Bum! The coercive sword exploded with horrifying might and blasted the ancestor Buddha's body into ashes. Wonderful Bookhouse. Chapter 1048. Just as the ancestor Buddha's body was destroyed, his soul reconstructed his body without any pause. Within the intense light from the explosion, Xueqi swung his sword again, using the flat side of the blade to attack the ancestor Buddha. The ancestor Buddha's body was continuously destroyed, and his body was continuously reconstructed. No! The ancestor Buddha's eyes became serious. Before Xueqi's sword could land on his body again, he split into dozens of souls. A string of golden Buddha beads appeared out of nowhere and shined with golden light, locking Xueqi in place. Xueqi's sword also stopped. The ancestral voice resounded. The dozens of ancestor Buddhas chanted a strange incantation. Zhou Xuanji did not panic but felt curious instead. What other tricks did this guy have?
He looked up suddenly and saw a sea of light above him.
Waves of rainbow light spread out in a circular shape, growing faster and faster. It was a bewildering sight. What's that? Zhou Xuanji looked up with narrowed eyes and saw a violet divine shadow gathering. Endless violet light flowed out from all directions, looking resplendent and majestic. Zhou Xuanji shrugged his shoulders and was about to step out of the ancestor Buddha's seal. At this moment, the violet divine shadow descended suddenly and swooped down, holding a sword shadow in its right hand. Swoosh! Zhou Xuanji wanted to dodge, but he found that his movements became abnormally slow.
He opened his eyes wide and slashed out with all his might.
Bum! The violet divine shadow disappeared, and an explosion occurred in Zhou Xuanji's body. The surrounding light was devoured and turned into a violet ocean. Zhou Xuanji's expression froze.
Blood flowed down the hair on his forehead. The ancestor Buddhas looked at him coldly and said in unison, "Brat, you lost."
Zhou Xuanji's expression changed.
He took a deep breath and asked, "What was that?" "A divine ability that could not be dodged." He felt that his soul was almost destroyed by that strike.
"It was really powerful. You are facing yourself, but you can't dodge it," the ancestor Buddha replied. However, at this moment, Zhou Xuanji smirked. His body exploded, but his body was still there. Eternal will.
As long as the will remained, so would his body and soul. The ancestor Buddhas opened their eyes wide and could not believe their eyes.
How could he be completely fine? What happened?" the ancestor Buddha asked with a trembling voice. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "I have already surpassed the imperishable stage. No matter how you attack, you cannot destroy my will." Willpower. The ancestor Buddha was stunned. Zhou Xuanji did not attack again. Fighting to this extent was enough. He looked at the original body of the ancestor Buddha and asked, "How about it? Are you willing to join me? I will teach you how to ascend to the next level." The ancestral Buddha fell silent. He understood that he could not defeat Zhou Xuanji, and this was very difficult for him to accept. However, he was more concerned about Zhou Xuanji's cultivation level. He also wanted to achieve this kind of will. Zhou Xuanji gave a slight smile and 2 rays of violet light shot out from his eyes. In that instant, the surroundings quickly changed, returning to the space-time kaleidoscope. "This is..."
The ancestral Buddha widened his eyes and asked in shock.
Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "It's just that time has been pushed back to the scene before our battle. Otherwise, this shattered space-time will spread and affect the boundless universe." The ancestral Buddha fell silent once more. He was shocked by Zhou Xuanji's power. Being able to play with time so easily caused his heart to waver.
"All right, from this day forth, I will serve you,"
the ancestor Buddha said through gritted teeth. He understood what this decision meant. In the future, he might become the laughing stock of the boundless universe. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Let's go back." He turned around and jumped out of the absent-minded state. The ancestral Buddha followed closely behind. As soon as they returned to the multi-star domain, unstoppable fire god appeared beside them. His massive body blocked Zhou Xuanji's vision. He looked down at the ancestor Buddha and asked in a low voice, "What do you want?" The ancestral Buddha's face was livid. He snorted coldly and did not reply. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "From today onwards, we are all on the same side. Don't worry." "One of our own? Could it be?" Wu Wei fire god was stunned. He had never thought that Zhou Xuanji could subdue the ancestor Buddha. He knew the ancestral Buddha's personality very well. This fellow was stubborn. This was the first time he had subdued someone. "All right, I'll arrange a place for him to stay," Zhou Xuanji said as he prepared to leave with the Buddha ancestor. The Buddha ancestor Buddha shook his head and said, "There's no need for that. I'll just set up my temple here." With a wave of his right hand, he tore open a spatial rift and entered it. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. Since it was like this, he would leave it to the Buddha ancestor. He nodded at Lawless Fire God and flew towards Stars Hall. With that, the ancestral Buddha joined the Sword Emperor Divine Court. Not many people knew about this, and Zhou Xuanji had no intention to publicize it. The Sword Emperor Divine Court was already powerful enough in everyone's eyes. There was no need to show off. A month later, Xueqi began to teach the ancestor Buddha about the ancestral sound and characters. Only after mastering the ancestral sound and characters could one begin cultivating the constitution-defying creation sutra. As for the Tao of extermination, that was another level of difficulty. Xueqi could not teach him the Tao of extermination. It felt like it could only be understood but not taught. After the ancestor Buddha learned the ancestral sound and characters, he felt like he had stepped into the door of a whole new world. He felt grateful to Xueqi and decided to stay in the Sword Emperor Divine Court. He began to cultivate in isolation. Xueqi did not need him to do anything. All he had to do was watch over the place. The Sword Emperor Divine Court rarely encountered great danger, or else the Sword Emperor Divine Court would be too weak. Spring passed and autumn came. Time was so worthless in the boundless universe. 200 years passed in a flash. News came from Nanwujin. Qin Zun fought with Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven again. After 9 days of battle, Qin Zun emerged victorious. 2 heavens were severely injured and disappeared without a trace. Nanwujin was in utter chaos, just like Beiwujin. Heroes rose from all walks of life and fought everywhere. Inside the Star Palace, Xueqi heard about Qin Zun's achievements and sighed in amazement. That's the post-archaic Supreme 3 Heavens we're talking about. Who would have thought that before they could dominate the world, they would end up in hiding? Times are truly different now. The current era is not inferior to the post-archaic Supreme 3 Heavens. Xueqi sighed in amazement. He did not have any other thoughts. So what if Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven were defeated? It was a good opportunity for them to rest for a while. These two were in cahoots. If not for Qin Zun, they would have stirred up trouble in no time. Xueqi had always kept in mind their fight for the 3 Heavens' fate retribution. My lord, should we take action and seize the opportunity to conquer Nanwujin? Yuanqing asked. Xueqi smiled and said, Sure. We can save the people of Nanwujin from the abyss of suffering. You make the arrangements. Let the Divine Court army led by Saint Hongqin head to Nanwujin. Remember to build teleportation portals, the more the better. Yuanqing was pleasantly surprised. He cupped his fist and smiled. Yes, my lord. Now that Nanwujin no longer had Cardinal Heaven and Hunyuan Heaven, there was no one powerful enough to intimidate them. Looking at Yuanqing's back, Xueqi smiled. Just when he was about to close his eyes, he suddenly remembered something. He immediately sent a telepathic message to Jin Cheng. Chapter 1049. Today, he came to the Hall of Stars. After saluting, he asked curiously, Your Majesty, do you have any instructions? Before he came, he saw Yuanqing excitedly heading towards Hongqin's sacred monarch's residence. For Yuanqing to be so excited, it must have been Xueqi who gave the order to attack the other infinity. This was the only thing Yuanqing was looking forward to. Yuanqing has already received the order to subdue South Limitless. I want to send you to the lawless region between North Limitless and South Limitless. Try to find out the ins and outs of that lawless region. It would be best if you could spread out the teleportation formations there. You can choose a divine army. Xueqi said with a smile. The lawless region was getting restless, but there was no big movement. He felt that it wouldn't be long before the lawless region would devour the boundless universe. The fire god had also mentioned this before. In the lawless zone, the forces were complicated. Even he didn't know how many old monsters were hiding there. Jin Qing nodded and asked hesitantly, Will this offend the lawless region? Xueqi waved his hand and smiled as he said, Powerful cultivators from the lawless region have long since snuck into the northern boundless region. Don't worry, even if we offend them, we're not afraid. There will be a battle sooner or later, and if we can seize the advantage of intelligence, we can restrict Eastern Boundless and Western Boundless region and have them assist us in the battle. The lawless region was a great threat to all sides. With the information they had, East Limitless and West Limitless could only listen to them. Jin Cheng came to a sudden realization and cupped his fists. I'll take action immediately. He turned and left. After he disappeared from the Star's Palace, Xueqi thought about it and summoned Xian Xianghua. Xian Xianghua had established the Tanhua sect a long time ago. Now, the Tanhua sect was not a nameless force in the northern Endless region. Everyone knew that the Tanhua sect's sect master was the Sword Emperor's woman, and no one dared to offend her. After a while, Xian Xianghua entered the palace. In addition to her, there was also Supreme Hong Chen and Xin Yanqing. The three girls greeted each other before looking at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji said softly, "The war is about to start again. You have all mastered the mortal qi. Next, I will personally preach the Tao to you so that your cultivation can improve quickly." The aura of the mortal world was very similar to opportunities. When the aura of the mortal world was attached to the enemy, it was enough to make the enemy fall into an abyss. Hearing this, the three women were pleasantly surprised. Xian Xianghua asked, "I want to bring along heaven's fate, can I?" Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said unpleasantly, "Tianyuan is also my grandson. Do you think I have forgotten about him?" "Don't worry about the juniors. You guys cultivate first." Xian Xianghua pursed her lips and did not argue further. Zhou Xuanji had not visited Zhou Tianyuan for a long time. However, Zhou Tianyuan already had a family and a career. He had his own life, so it was better for him not to see Zhou Xuanji. At least he would be far away from the conflicts of the boundless universe. Although there were endless battles everywhere, the living beings in many large worlds were still unaffected. They all had their own exciting stories. Zhou Xuanji sealed the Star's palace and began preaching. As soon as the Eternal Will appeared, Xian Xianghua, Hongchen Supreme, and Shen Yanqing instantly fell into a profound state of epiphany. The ancestral voice reverberated, and resplendent silver light reverberated in the Star Hall. In less than a year, the news of the chaos in the South Boundless spread to the other three boundless realms. The Sword Emperor Divine Court intervened forcefully, and was willing to recruit the living beings in the South Boundless realms. This caused everyone in the North Boundless realms to cheer. After East Endless and West Endless heard the news, they both sent their armies to intervene in the name of saving the lives of the South Endless. For a moment, Nan Wujin was even more confused. Hunyuan Heaven and Cardinal Heaven had joined forces to eradicate the major factions before Nan Wujin, and the remaining factions simply couldn't withstand the endless attacks from the three sides. 7 years later, the news of Qin Zun's appearance in the West Infinity spread, and he declared that he wanted to challenge Gu Juejiao. Because Gu Juejiao was the strongest in the world, he was willing to give Gu Juejiao time to prepare. His arrogance caused a huge uproar. However, there were also countless beings who worshipped him and wished to become an existence like him. Although the surroundings were in chaos, Zhou Xuanji, Gu Juejiao, and Zhongji did not show themselves. Such tacit understanding caused everyone to speculate. Year after year, day after day, inside the Hall of Stars, Zhou Xuanji looked at the three women who were surrounded by the silver light and smiled satisfactorily. The three girls had already accumulated a strong cultivation base in the first place, and under his preaching, they broke through to the Supreme of the 7 courts one after another, and were continuously charging towards the Supreme of the 8 courts. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before they broke through again. The help of such preaching was not completely beneficial, and it would even limit their future growth. However, without Zhou Xuanji's teachings, it would have been very difficult for them to improve. Not only them, but many people in the Emperor's Sword Divine range were the same. They were originally mortals, and it was Zhou Xuanji who raised them up step by step. Mortal gods might be very powerful in the Kunlun origin court, but they were nothing in the endless universe. Mortal sovereign had stagnated in cultivation for countless years. One's talent was limited, and only serendipity could break through the limit. Zhou Xuanji continued preaching. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something. He squinted his eyes and created an outer soul clone. The outer soul clone immediately disappeared from the hall. In the dark void, a man in heavy black armor strolled forward. His eyes were indifferent, and his long black hair looked a little messy. He was holding a halberd in his hand, and dozens of tiny meteorites were levitating around the halberd blade. "Stop!" A violent cry came. A group of deities, radiating with purple radiance, dashed toward him and surrounded him. The leading general had a dignified appearance. His aura was so powerful that even the space around him fluctuated. He sized up the black-armored man and asked in a deep voice, "The teleportation region of the Sword Emperor Divine Court is not something you can handle. Tell me your name. The black-armored man was alone, and his aura was filled with murderous intent. He was obviously an enemy. Move aside, the black-armored man said with a hoarse voice. The halberd in his hand trembled slightly. Suppress him. The divine general was enraged and cried out furiously. Bum! All the deities activated their divine abilities, and a powerful radiance engulfed the black-armored man. Seeking death. The black-armored man snorted coldly as he swung his halberd. A ray of black light swept out and forced the deities back. The deities could not dodge in time and were sent flying backward while vomiting blood. Some of them were even blasted into smithereens. The divine general was enraged and was about to call for reinforcements. At this moment, the black-armored man appeared behind him out of nowhere and pressed his sword against the divine general's neck. Do you need to be so angry? Xueqi's voice came suddenly, and the black-armored man turned around in shock. He saw Xueqi, who was wearing a luxurious purple robe, walking on the Milky Way. Outer Soul Clone. With the support of the Eternal Will, the Outer Soul Clone looked like the original Xueqi. You are the Sword Emperor? The black-armored man asked coldly. He was shocked in his heart. How did this guy cultivate? How could he be so unfathomable? Xueqi said calmly, Let go of my subordinates. Tell me what you want.
Having heard that, the black-armored man hesitated for a while before putting down his halberd and pushing the divine general away.
Chapter 1050. Sword Emperor, don't stop me. I just want to use your teleportation formation to head south. The black-armored man said in a low voice as he stared at Xueqi. His tone was not polite, as if he would attack Xueqi if he refused. Xueqi asked with a smile, Where are you from, and why are you going to Southern Infinity? Why should I tell you? The black-armored man snorted coldly. Xueqi was not angered and said with a smile, Just because this is my territory. You want to use my teleportation portal. If you don't tell me and still want to use it forcefully, then I'm sorry. I will let you understand why the Sword Emperor Divine Court can dominate the northern boundless continent. In the distance, the divine generals and gods all looked at Xueqi fervently. This was the Sword Emperor that they believed in. Not arrogant, but not afraid of any existence. The black-armored man flew into a rage and roared, You want to attack me? Come on. He raised his halberd and stabbed towards Xueqi. Bang! His blood chi flew out and turned into a massive dragon, which was about to devour Xueqi. Two rays of exterminating divine light shot out from Xueqi's eyes and easily destroyed the massive dragon. He took out the divine sword of coercion and slowly rose up. His body burst forth with resplendent silver light. I treated you courteously, yet you're so rude. Since that's the case, you can go and die. Xueqi's face turned incredibly cold. He looked like a completely different person compared to the smiling Xueqi before. Rumble. A pillar of light descended from the sky and enveloped his body. It was the eternal will of his main body. As the eternal will grew stronger, his aura also grew stronger. At this moment, his avatar was like his main body. The black-armored man's expression changed. He gripped his halberd tightly and roared angrily. Ah! His voice was incomparably mournful, as if he was suffering from great pain. His body began to twist and his bones broke, as if something was about to break out of his body. His hair quickly grew longer, and his black armor was dyed red with blood. He suddenly raised his eyes. Streaks of blood appeared on his forehead, and they were still wriggling about. It was horrifying. He suddenly disappeared. Xueqi stabbed backward with his sword, and the blade accurately pierced through the black-armored man's throat. The black-armored man's eyes widened in disbelief. How could this be? Xueqi's gaze was still cold, and the serendipity extermination sword appeared in his left hand. Pucci! With a horizontal slash of the sword, the black-armored man was beheaded before he could react. Xueqi turned around and activated his exterminating divine eyes, sucking out the black-armored man's soul forcefully. At the eternal realm, he had already surpassed the realm of any living being in the boundless universe. Unless it was those old monsters who had lived for countless years, no one could be a match for him. The black-armored man was quite powerful, but Xueqi could clearly see all of his movements. There were no surprises. Zhou Xuanji easily suppressed the black-armored man. He turned around and looked at the god generals and gods in the distance. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your hard work. Do your best, the god court will not mistreat you." With that, he vanished into thin air. The divine general and his subordinates immediately became excited. "Oh my god! His Majesty the Sword Emperor is actually so approachable. So strong, that guy can't resist at all. With such an expert leading us, we will be able to unify the endless universe sooner or later." Ha ha ha, that's for sure. Even the other unending realms have the same opinion. We have to cultivate properly. We almost suffered a setback. Fortunately, we have His Majesty the Sword Sovereign. Back at Stars Hall, Zhou Xuanji's original body was still preaching the ancestral voice to Xian Xianghua and the other two ladies. The avatar came to his side and fused into his body. The black-armored man's soul entered his Kunlun sword. In the dark space, Zhou Xuanji's eternal will hung high above and looked down at the black-armored man. "You?" The black-armored man was furious, but he felt more fear in his heart. It was not a big deal if he could not win. The key was that he did not even know how he lost. The feeling of not being able to see through his enemy made his heart sink into an abyss. "Tell me, who are you?" Zhou Xuanji asked coldly. The black-armored man gritted his teeth and did not reply. At this moment, numerous truth swords appeared out of nowhere and pierced into the black-armored man's soul from all directions, turning him into a porcupine. The truth swords formed by the eternal will. They used the truth swords as the output of will, which amplified the power of the truth swords. "Tell me, who are you? Where are you from?" Zhou Xuanji cried out sharply, which made the black-armored man shudder. He replied blankly, "I'm from the ancient god race, from the lawless region. I was defeated by the divine race to the northern endless realm." Ancient god race? Divine race? Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked further, "Then why are you going to the southern endless realm?" "Because the divine race wants to devour the lawless region. I'm fleeing there. My ancestors divined that the eternal god gate appeared in the southern endless realm. I want to find the eternal god gate." The black-armored man replied honestly. After saying that, he revealed a terrified expression. What happened? Why did he tell the truth? He looked at the truth swords on his body in fear. "What are these swords?" Zhou Xuanji continued, "Tell me, how many races and factions are there in the lawless region?" From what the black-armored man said, the lawless region had many powerful races that he did not expect. Although the lawless region is a crack in the boundless universe, the space inside it is much larger than the boundless universe. Before the ancient Lord era, countless races migrated to the lawless region. There were sects and races, but I'm not sure how many factions there are, the black-armored man replied. His eyes turned dull. Zhou Xuanji frowned. This answer was even more terrifying than an accurate answer. Inside the Star Palace, Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes with a solemn expression. He had been guarding against the lawless region, but he still underestimated the lawless region. If not for the barrier between the lawless region and the boundless universe would have been devoured long ago. As for what the barrier was, it was not hard to understand. It must be the ancient lord's will and great Tao rules. It was because of the ancient lord that so many races migrated to the lawless region. Now, living beings from the lawless region were entering and exiting the lawless region. This meant that the ancient lord's restrictions on them were weakening. This was not good news. Seems like I have to hurry and unify the boundless universe. I wonder if there are eternal cultivators in the depths of the lawless region, Zhou Xuanji mumbled. The ancestral voice was still reverberating in the palace. The three girls were still in a state of enlightenment and did not hear him. He decided to make the ancestral Buddha break through as soon as possible. He was not worried that the ancestral Buddha would bite him back. After all, he owed the ancestral voice to the ancestral Buddha. He owed the ancestral Buddha a favor. After that, he stopped thinking about it and looked at the three girls. A few decades later, the three girls had all broken through to the great sovereign of the 9 holes. With such cultivation, they could dominate even on the endless battlefield. Immortal cultivators were not as common as cabbages. Go and consolidate your cultivation, Zhou Xuanji said softly. Xian Xianghua, Hongchen Sovereign, and Xin Yanqing nodded and turned to leave. They were all very excited. As they walked, they discussed their previous enlightenment. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.